Ponytails podcast. Here we go. Hello and welcome everyone to the Ponytails podcast. My name is Andres Gamboa. I'm cracking open a beer so I can have a solid drink with Roger Seip, who's coming on the show today. If this is your first episode, welcome. If you don't know, this is the Ponytails podcast where we interview people who sold books door to door with Southwestern Advantage. And while we're not affiliated with Southwestern in any way, we do love talking to the alumni of the internship where people sold for 80 hours a week, straight commission in the summer in a whole different part of the country. It's a whole thing. If you haven't heard of it, Google it. If you have heard of it and you did this crazy thing, well, good. Glad you're here. Hopefully, again, if this is your first time, make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. You can go catch some of our other episodes. This is episode 109. And so we're super excited to have our guest here today. Everybody knows Roger Seip, man. He's like a legend. Like if there's a Mount Rushmore of the coolest keynote addresses, maybe just of all the bookmen ever and bookmen and women, he would be on that thing. So super excited for them. Before we get to Roger, before we bring him on the air, we do have some announcements that are important. Do not skip over these. If you're listening live, you can't skip over these. But I will say, if you're in Nashville, Tennessee, next weekend, next Friday, so not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, Friday, April 22nd, we are having a meetup in Nashville. I'm coming along with our brewmaster, Heather Dutton. We're launching a beer. And so we're going to be doing like a beer tasting at Lee McCroskey's house in his backyard with his pool. We're doing some hors d'oeuvres and stuff like that. If you want more information on how to RSVP on that, the link will be provided at the description of this episode. We are trying to have everyone RSVP by April 17th. The first 40 people to sign up are all welcome. We already have like, I think 12 or something at this point, but that'll be next Friday at 6 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. It's going to be like a nice little bit more dressed up occasion. So make sure to sign up for that. If you want details before this airs on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you're listening to this already, or it's past April 17th, still submit your name. There's a chance that we might not have the 40 yet. So, but they're going quick. We just launched it yesterday and 12 spots got filled up over the last like 12 hours or 24 hours. So we're excited for that. Second update is on BIZZLER. The sign up for BIZZLER is coming up. If you don't know what BIZZLER is, we're throwing an alumni get together in Mexico and Cancun. And that's going to be August 15th through the 19th of this year. But if you want to get signed up using the rates that we got for the hotel, we got a solid contract with them. It's $1,500 a person. Spouses are welcome, even if they didn't sell books. But the deadline to get signed up is May 1st. So like literally in like 2 weeks. So make sure you guys get it. Again, that's on the description below. You can click on BIZZLER update. All of the details, like more in-depth details, are going to be on there. So you guys can check that out and make sure you guys are getting signed up for that so we can see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have, I think like a solid number of people there going as well. So we're excited for that. We're getting ready for our bodies are getting ready with our friends over at Elevate Wellness. So I wanted to bring up Seth and Zane. And of course, Joe Ignas as well. But these guys are the ones helping us get into shape. You know, before I got started with them, I didn't really know what to get in the grocery store. Like I was super eating unhealthily. So they helped me figure kind of the things I needed to eat, the calories that I needed to consume based on how much I was burning. And they also got me on a really solid workout plan because I was losing track of everything. I would just go to the gym and think that was good enough going through the motions. So they've been helping me stay accountable. These guys are studs and they don't really mess around when it comes to getting you in shape. They're very fun people to work with, and it's a fun group to be a part of with the Elevate Wellness team and in that community. Our team has been using it for months, and we've been seeing great results. I'm looking fly. I look pretty good for my wedding, and my wife has been happy about it. So if you guys want to get in touch with them or with us to get you guys signed up or get you ready for your summer, or if you're coming to BIZZLER to get you ready for BIZZLER, make sure that you reach out to us. We'll message them for you, or we'll put you in contact with Seth or Zane to get you signed up to get into shape. We are also brought to you by Will Metscher. Will is a stud and a half. And one of the things that I love about working with Will, he's been coaching us now for, I think, the better part of like 6 months now. But one of the biggest things that, you might miss about being part of the Southwestern community or the culture is the ability to make a good impact. And so the reason why book people are so unique is because they were college students helping other college students learn the things that, matter most, and people don't really learn them until their 30s or 40s and 50s. So if you want to be the kind of person who makes an impact on other people, working with Will is probably one of the best ways to do it. So unless you live under a rock, you're probably aware that Southwestern Consulting is a thing. So the cool thing is that with Will, he's one of the most successful coaches that they have, and he's hiring people to work with him. So every one of the coaches he works with has earned over 6 figures and built a really solid career that has created a solid impact with the customers that they work with and all their clients. And so that's exciting. And of course, we are also brought to you by Cardinal Senior Benefits. So 7-time bookman Quentin Roberts is one of our partners, and he's our newest book person that is working with us. We're super excited to work with Cardinal. They started 4 years ago. It was started by Pedro Vega and Nick Dale, and they have a solid team that they're building, and it's actually pretty incredible. Just having to be able to share with them and the vision that they have for their company is super amazing. So they've doubled and tripled every year since they got started, and they're looking to do that again in 2022. I would say pound for pound, they have the most production per agent than any other final expense group in the entire country. So the good thing about working with them is if you're looking for something to do is they don't do any cold calling. It's all warm leads. They're provided for you, and they're able to make a solid income, 6 figures and above, but they're only working about 25 to 35 hours a week. So it's pretty solid. It's smarter, not harder. They're doing a big, heavy push for recruiting. They're also doing a bonus. So this is actually a bonus that's running through May 1st for BIZZLER. So $500 if you refer someone and they get hired. And then after 5 people get hired through that bonus in the next couple of weeks, then one of those 5 people, so whoever referred one of those 5, is going to get a free trip to BIZZLER. So that's $1,500 to get you to BIZZLER. So just refer some people, and you could win a trip to go to Mexico for free. So I know book people are competitive, so that's solid. If you know somebody that has Southwestern experience or a lot of sales experience, reach out to us. We'll DM us on Instagram, Facebook, comment below, and then we can get you guys contacted with them. That is the gist so far. Now, time to bring up our guest of the evening, the man of the hour. Nobody wants to hear me talk. It's been already 7 minutes of that. So we're going to move it on over to Roger Seip, my man.
What's up, Brad?
Gosh, dude, it is so exciting to have you on here.
Oh, geez. The honor is mine.
Honestly, I remember listening to your keynote address. I mean, most people, when we posted that you were coming on the show, they were like, "This is my favorite keynote." So,
that's really good to hear. It's been a long, I was sort of realizing this. I was like, I had a really, I think I had the second longest run as the keynote speaker behind Mort Utley. Mort did the keynote for
ever
100 years. I think he was the keynote speaker in 1865. And then I realized, I was like, wow, it's been more than 10 years since I had the opportunity to be at sales school in a President's Club dinner. So it's very nice to hear that still resonates. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, man. Well, I got to brag about you and talk a little bit about your success, even beyond Southwestern. We'll kind of get started with what you're up to now. But let me just, for people who don't maybe recognize your name, which I don't know how at this point they wouldn't, but 9 Summers Sold started in 1989, which is a crazy summer because that's the summer Rosen set the record, right, with Bill Zizzy. That was your first summer. And we'll get into that.
Every week, man, back and forth. We should get into that because that was a pretty pivotal time for me, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. You were part of the Elite Eagles. Obviously, sharp dressed man. You're so good looking. Don't cut nobody. You're so sharp. And then after you went on to become a best-selling author, your book is Train Your Brain for Success.
Yep.
And people can find. We'll post links where people can find your book if they want to read a little bit more about that. But then you became a professional speaker and coach. Your company with Freedom Personal Development is your company. And honestly, then the 10 years that you spent on the run with the keynote address, I also want to talk about how did you get that gig? Because that's such a cool honor, right? To be able to do that.
That was a pretty good sales job on my part too.
Yeah, so we'll get into all of that and more, some behind the scenes look, maybe some stuff that people don't know about your career and about that moment in your life. But let's talk a little bit about what are you up to now. If people don't know exactly who Roger Seip is, if you had to describe it to someone in layman's terms, what does Freedom Personal Development do? What are you up to now?
Sure. So for 26 years now, I have run and owned a company called Freedom Personal Development, as you just said. Basically, we're well, if this was 3 years ago, I would have described us as a speaking and training company, because basically what we did is we built $1 million business, multi-million-dollar business, running around the country giving talks to groups of people. And then you might be aware that about 2 years ago, both running around the country and groups of people sort of went away for a little while.
There's like a flu or something happening. Right?
I don't even remember what it was.
Something with a bat. Was it Batman?
Something like that. It kind of messed with our business a little bit. So we've become. I'm very grateful that we're getting back to being like that type of business is coming back. But essentially what we do is we work with business people, sales professionals, business owners, and leaders through speaking, training, and a lot of coaching these days, one-on-one. And just we help people get and keep their head on straight so that they can go get awesome results in their business and actually enjoy their life in the process. So yeah, I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world delivering that message and working with people one-on-one and in small groups, and it's just been a very cool. It's been a very cool run. It's actually, I always talk about how it's just sort of the continuing manifestation of a lifelong dream.
That is awesome. I mean, I don't quite do that kind of speaking. I do stand up. It's different kind of speaking.
I didn't know that, Andres. You do stand up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because of the pandemic, I also kind of had to laugh at myself in my own, garage.
I did stand up professionally for 8 years.
What?
Yeah. You didn't know that?
No way. No.
Yeah. It's
that's so cool.
Yeah. It's I started doing it. That was actually a pretty good sales job too. We can tell the story if you want to.
Hell yeah. Let's get into that.
So, sure. Like one of the ways that I was going to say got known, but it's more like one of the ways I made a spectacle of myself in the book business was we always had the talent show at Great Recruiters. And I was like, I had always wanted to do stand-up. And so I was like, screw it. I'll do some stand-up. I totally stole all of my material the first time I did it, but people thought I was funny. I was like, well, this is awesome. And so, I did it professionally. I did it in conjunction. I started doing stand-up when I was actually still in school. It was like after my third summer of selling books. And the way that it finally happened, I don't know how many people know this story actually, but it's a good book story.
Tell it. This is great. Let's go into this. The whole part of this show.
We were like, I was always talking about, yeah, I'm gonna go down to the comedy club, but I'm gonna stand up. I've done a bit of a talent show. So it was a winter, like midwinter evening in Madison, Wisconsin, where I lived and still do. And we had just gotten done with a day of interviewing, and we had some big name people who were like in town to help. Chris Rue, I remember, was there, and the big instigator of all of this was Tommy Dunn, who you had a bunch of people on his show. He would be a great guest for you, by the way.
Cool. We'll have to book him.
So Tommy we're just like shooting the shit after a day of interviewing, and I think we might have been having some beers, and he goes, we were in the office that we had set up on campus, and he goes, all right, I am sick of listening to you talk about this, Seip. Give me the phone. He calls, he grabs the phone. It's like 20 of my best friends and like guys that I sold with and recruited with and like competed against and like had a really good time with. He picks up the phone, calls the comedy club, which is like literally 3 blocks up the road from where our office is, and totally BS's his way through the conversation. I mean, it was full. It was full Bookfield awesomeness. He goes, "Yeah, I need to. Yeah, this is Tommy Dunn. I'm an agent here in town. He's not an agent. I'm an agent here in town. I need to talk to the owner of the club." He goes, "Okay. Oh, hey, that's you. Hey, Vic, nice to meet you. I'm Tommy Dunn. I'm an agent here in town. We haven't had a chance to meet yet, but I represent a guy. His name is Roger Seip. He's really funny, and we're just wondering how do we get on stage at your club?" And he goes, "So what I hear, as we've got 20 of our compatriots like watching Tommy do this." Tommy goes, "Okay, all right, okay, perfect, sounds good. We'll be there." He looks at me. He goes, "Seip, you're on in an hour."
Yes.
And I was like, son of a biscuit. And I couldn't. I mean, what am I going to do? Like all of my homies and homettes are there, and it was like one of those moments where like the jukebox stops, and everybody goes, "Well, what you gonna do, Seip?" And I was like, "Okay,
Oh, yes.
let's go." So
Oh, yes.
so everybody got on the phone, and I had a little bit of a reputation for being a humorous person by that point, and it was. So we did it, and I showed up, and the guy was, the owner of the club was like, "Okay, you're Roger." It just so happens that we had called on a Wednesday night, and I don't know if it's still this way or if it's this way in Portland, but in the world of comedy clubs at the time, Wednesday night was showcase night.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah,
or like some sort of open mic type vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, they some people call it some places this is open mic, some places it's showcase night. So
Yeah.
it happened to be a Wednesday night. Like the timing was just completely serendipitous. So he's like, "Okay, you got 4 minutes, Seip. You got 4 minutes on stage, and if you're funny, if you get some laughs, then you can come back next week, and we'll give you 8 minutes next week. But like, let's just take it a step at a time. I've never met you before. Just go up there and don't suck."
That's awesome.
And so
that's hilarious.
That's I didn't know you did stand up. That's very cool.
Yeah, I have a similar origin story. Brandon Q, I knew he did stand up. He actually was living in Madison when he like started, and then he actually moved to Chicago to do a couple of classes at Second City.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him at a Get Back, and I heard he was doing stand up. I'm like, I always wanted to do that. Like, I've always wanted to do stand up. Like, that'd be so fun. And then we. He's like, well, "How about this? If I ever live in the same city as you, you'll come do stand up with me." I said, "Sure." But I mean, he lives in Chicago. He's never lived in Lincoln or in Omaha. Like, what the hell? Sure enough, he starts dating a girl in Omaha, Amanda, another book girl. She's been on the show, and he calls me out of the blue, and he's like, "Hey, when you said that you were going to do stand up with me if we were in the same town?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, well, I just moved to Omaha. There's an open mic next week. You're on." Same vibe. He's like, "You're gonna come." And I said, "Shit, okay, all right, I'm a man of my word, I think.
There's no going back.
All right, fine.
You can't say no.
Yeah, you gotta go commit." And so I did, and yeah, man, it was the craziest thing. It was so fun. That's honestly what I would like to do with my life. Like, the goal with this podcast is to have it be such a thing where all I do is just do the shows, and then the rest of the time I'm just writing stand up because it's being ran and operated by the team that we are able to pay.
That's a good.
That's the goal. That's
a good plan.
So I can just be free and just do stand up now that it's coming back. Because I did that. I'd always watch. You see athletes like LeBron James will be asked like, "Oh, you won the championship. How was it?" And he goes, "I just knew I was born to play basketball." And you're like, "Cheese! What a cheese ball! Like, who says that? What a cliche." No, I did stand up. And it was this room. I did great. It was so fun. The people laughed. And the feeling of people laughing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just,
you know what I mean?
Andres, I know exactly what you mean.
Oh, What
It's
is it
good.
like for you? What is it like for you when you just like tell a thing that you think is funny to like nothingness, and then there's like this wave? What does that feel like to you?
It just, I don't know. There's a little bit of like, okay, there's a little bit of that feeling like I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do, as long as I'm doing it in the right way. The first joke I ever told, the first thing I ever did on stage was so awful to somebody that I can't even repeat it.
Story for another time.
It's a story for the short version of it was that there was somebody who was, but I was like the fourth person up on stage, and I had to, like, there was somebody there who was just drunk and and heckling badly and just wouldn't shut up and was just ruining the show. And so I was at least smart enough to go, okay, I know that I'm gonna have to put a stop to that. I'm gonna have to put it before I do anything. I'm gonna have to put a stop to that. And the only way that I could think of to do it, it worked, but I said some stuff that I couldn't. It was awful enough that I shouldn't even be talking about it now, But I was like, oh, what the heck? I was 22 years old. You can get away with it in a comedy club like that. But like when it's done right, I don't know. It just feels like all the pieces of the world have fallen into place for a moment. And
yes,
it
feels like that was what I was born to do, and it made sense.
Yeah, and it's just good to know that you can, if you can make people laugh, it's, I don't know, it's just a good feeling.
Yeah, man. I about cried with what you just said. I know exactly how you feel. Yeah. It's a beautiful art. It's a beautiful art.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And wow, I didn't know you did that.
I didn't know you did that. Look at us discovering things about each other already.
Oh man! So how long did you do it for? What was your run? Like,
I spent 8 years doing it. Wow. I would say semi-professionally. Like it was professional in the sense that I got paid to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, and how I started getting paid to do comedy was 100% an I eat problems for breakfast moment. Like I got off this, like I did the 4 minutes. It was decent. And then the next week I went back and they gave me 8 minutes and it was a little better. And after my second time on stage, I just walked up to the owner and I was like, okay, so talk to me about how do I get paid for this? How do I go? Like, I've been doing this for free. How do I go about getting paid? He just kind of chuckled and was like, all right, well, here's how it works. He explained to me how it works. Is like, you got to be able to do 15 minutes to get up. You got to be able to do a 15-minute set and have it be good, to be the MC. Like that's kind of the entry-level gig in comedy world.
Yes.
And it's so funny that it's still that way. And so I was like, okay. So he's like, so next week you can do 10 minutes. The week after that, you can do 15. And if that's good, then you can MC the next week. So I did that. And then, yeah, I spent 8 years doing it. It was definitely a paid hobby. And then I took like one step down the path of doing it like as a career. This was when I was I graduated school and I was in like my full-timing recruiter mode and approaching district sales leader mode. And so it was not my full-time thing. I was like, all right, let's just see what it would be like to just, go on the road. And I did that one time and I went, nope.
Wow.
Nope. It was very clear feedback. I was like, this has been great for what it is. 1,000,000%. I do not want to live in a bar. I do not want to be constantly surrounded by mentally ill, crazy people who, do this job as a defense mechanism against the world. And I don't want to live in a bar the rest of my life. And so, that's when I kind of stopped.
Yeah, it's a tough career.
Yeah, and then that's when I was like, okay, I loved being on stage. Like I loved that part of it, but I just didn't I was like, this is not the life that I want to live. So that was right. That was when I started Freedom Personal Development.
I was gonna say, did that feed into what you know when you started your company? So how did that transition? How did you and then what aspects of stand-up and what aspects of Southwestern did you pull to like really help you through starting the company?
So I had always this probably plays into I know you're going to ask me about how did I get started in the book business, and this probably plays into it. I had always I had decided when I was 13 years old that I wanted to be a professional speaker, which is a really weird thing to decide when you're 13 years old. What had happened was my uncle was a professional speaker and really successful at it. His audience was retail people, and this, I mean, geez, I'm gonna talk about old. I mean, this was like 1983, and he came to Milwaukee where I lived, and my mom, his sister, brought me to see him, and I remember sitting in the back of the room, and there was, I don't know, he was probably speaking to a group of like 300 people, and he was hilarious and high energy and good. He was talking about attitude and business and customer service, all these store managers. And I mean, I was in 7th grade, so I didn't really understand the content, right? Like I didn't really get what he was talking about. I just remember seeing him have this whole group of people like under his spell, and they were just like eating it up and loving it and learning. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to do that. I want to do that. I want to be that guy. And then it was super clear. So so part of the reason I got into the book business in the beginning is because I knew that all the way through high school. And when I was a freshman in college, I was realizing quickly that, okay, if you want to be, I mean, Andres, if you have a dream of being an entertainer, you know this the same. It's in many ways it's similar to being a speaker, in that you can't really go to school for it.
Yeah.
Right. Correct. There's no you can't go to college. There's no.
And when you got it, you got it. There's people who want to and they don't, but if you know what you're doing and that's your passion, and for us people that are speakers like that, they know. And so when you know that that's what you want to do, there's no place you can really go to get it professionally. Like you have to just kind of like,
you got to figure it out.
Yeah. Essentially,
you got to kind of make your own way. So that's part of why I did stand up, and it's a big part of why I decided to sell books in the first place, because I was like, okay, with this, I'm realizing that I can't take. There's no curriculum for Professional Speaker 101 at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, but I bet if I could, I bet if I could learn, I bet if I could sell, I bet that would be helpful. Like if I could learn how to be a persuasive person, I bet that would be helpful. And then I also bet if I could get really good at making people laugh, that would probably be helpful too. So that turned out to be true. So yeah,
amazing.
I left the book business, and I kind of phased myself out of doing stand up. And then I started a speaking and training and coaching business, which was what I really wanted to do all along.
That is brilliant. Oh, can I tell you a story about? I've never told this story really much.
We're kind of all about telling stories on this podcast, aren't we?
Yeah. So I've done public speaking, professional. I got paid as a high schooler I got paid money to talk and inspire people.
It's badass, dude.
It was crazy.
Are you gonna give me money to do this?
This is how I knew I was gonna be good at Southwestern. Yeah, dude, it was crazy. So the way it started was it has to do a little bit with like the story that my book tells. This is actually just the same speech, but just in book form. But basically, so for those people who don't know, my book's about when my family moved to the United States. I'm originally from Colombia, and our family was going to get murdered. So we had to dip, and we ended up in Nebraska. It's a crazy story.
We had to, maybe, is that like the subtitle? I can't see it. Is that like the subtitle of the book? We had to dip.
I should make it that. A family's battle, that'd be hilarious. A family's battle against persecution and sacrifices for freedom.
I.e., we had to dip.
Yeah.
From our country.
We had to run for our lives.
Wow.
But
I don't mean to make light of that, Andres.
I make light of it, man. My stand-up has a lot to do with I ride the immigration wave pretty hard, so it's all good. It's all good. If I make fun of it, you can make fun of it.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, long story short, we were doing an event, and I in high school I was volunteering, and we were doing an event, and I was like, I'll just go talk to the superintendent and see if we can get this event to the teachers, and then they can tell us students, because it was for families. Very long story short. And in that, he's like, so I want to hear about my student. I was like in 10th grade, and he goes, so tell me about you. And I said, oh, I mean, yeah, I'm from Colombia. I told him kind of like the brief version of that. And he goes, wait a minute, you moved to Nebraska and you grew up in the public school system here in this town, Grand Island? And I go, yeah. He goes, and you think that helped you succeed? I go, yeah. And he goes, if you want to, you seem like you're okay talking about this. Would you want to tell this story to a meeting that I'm about to have in 5 minutes? And I go, yeah, okay. So it turns out it was like all of the principals of all of the schools in the public system in that town in Grand Island, which is like probably like 30 total schools. It's not a big town. So
I've been to Grand Island.
Nice.
I know where Grand Island. I know what Grand Island's all about, Andres.
It's not grand or an island.
I got to tell you, it's probably the least Colombian place on planet Earth.
Which is why we went there, because we didn't want to get murdered. So we're like, nobody lives here that knows about Colombia. So this is great.
I think there's a lot of people in Grand Island who are actually in the witness protection program.
Most likely, actually. It makes sense for the way that town behaves completely. Actually, that's a very interesting take. We can explore that later. But so I gave that talk. Yeah, I got up there and I was like, how long do you want me to talk for? And he's like, can you talk for like 20 minutes? I said, yeah. I mean, I know the story frontwards and backwards. Like, sure. And again, at this point, love stand-up. I had discovered 7th grade. I discovered what stand-up was. I'm like, people get paid for this shit. Like, I want to do that someday. And so, like,
I want to be that guy.
Yeah. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, I'll talk about it and make people laugh. And so I was just out there being myself, telling my story. And so he says yes to doing the project thing that we were originally there for. But then that was in like March of that year. And then in May of so I was now, August going into my 11th grade year, he goes, hey, so I think you're a natural speaker. I think you're doing great. How would you like to give that talk exactly, maybe a little bit more in depth, to like the entire faculty and like teachers, everybody of the Grand Island Public School System? And I said, sure. So I wrote a speech out and I went and did that thing and I made them laugh. It was so funny. And then what happened after that is then I started getting asked to go speak. And one time they were like, so what do you charge for a speech? And I was like,
charge.
What do you mean charge? Like, yeah, it's like, how much does it cost to book you? And I was like, $500. I just threw a number out. I was like 17.
$1 million.
He's like they're like, yeah, what do you charge? And I was like, I don't know, $500. And they're like, okay. And they signed me a check. And they started. So then I would go all over the state and sometimes in the Midwest, just speaking to schools about all my high school career.
Andres,
you
were a budding young entrepreneur even then.
So let me ask you. So this is about your company. So if I'm who's the kind of person that would hire you? Like if I'm XYZ person, what would I need to be or have need for to find you and be like, Roger, I want you to be my coach?
Yeah. My company and we work with business people for starters. Like I've done some work with students and schools, but like we are definitely called to work with business people who are really committed to growing something, a book of business, a company that they started. We tend to work with a lot of sales professionals just because that's my background, and then they sort of fit the mold. Yeah, if you're a business person who's really committed to growing something and you understand that, all right, all of my success starts between my ears. I gotta get them level right here.
Boom, right there. Yeah.
Because that's really what we work on. We're not. I always tell people, when they work with me, I'm not the head coach. I'm the head coach. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant.
And yeah, so that's. Oh, and I had this kind of epiphany about 8 years ago as I was having some as I was like in a retreat about my business, and we were talking about identifying your ideal client, and they had me do a little exercise where I kind of went. I didn't get the answer that I was looking for when I thought I would get it, but then like 2 hours later, it was literally like I'd heard a voice from God. It was like, okay, here's the kind of person that you need to work with. It's a business person who's committed to growing something real specific, and they have a good sense of humor.
Bananas. I might be getting in touch with you after this.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. You have to understand how I define a good sense of humor. If you find my jokes funny, that means that you have a good sense of humor.
I mean, I left a shit ton in your keynote address. Ain't no stopping them. So
hey,
I mean,
then listen. If you don't find my jokes funny, then we're probably not going to be friends because I'm not changing them.
Check. I got it. This is good stuff, man. Oh man, I love that.
We're a little all over the place. Are we doing this the way we're supposed to be doing it, Andres?
Yeah, we can do whatever we want. This is literally true. Like
your show.
The uncuffed. That's why we're drinking. What are you drinking? Just wine?
Yeah, I got a little Cabernet.
Nice. Yeah, this is like if you watch like Alicia Huck's episode or even Lee McCroskey's, like we were all over the place, and that's the way it's designed. It's just wherever the conversation goes.
That's the way that those two are, and it's always good.
Yeah, it's never boring. I would listen to any of their conversations at any point in time. They're awesome people. As well as all our other 108 plus episodes. They've all been fun, but like, yeah, wherever we want to take it, we take it. That's totally cool.
Okay. Well, where should we go next?
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, so we, with growing a business like that, cause you scaled, you said like multi-million-dollar, in production. And so as a budding business, right, we turned this podcast into an LLC and it's a company and we're trying to grow. Thank you so much. What advice
did you have to pay taxes yet on it?
That's was with my accountants this week. So
So pay your tax. Just a little tip. Pay your taxes.
Pay your taxes.
Pay your taxes.
Tip number one. Right.
My advice.
That's good.
Write that down, Gamboa.
Write that down. That's right. Got it. But yeah, what advice would you give? I mean, some of our sponsors like Elevate Wellness, they're crushing it, right? They're getting clients in. They're very new. They're brand new. Yeah. Some other Cardinal Insurance in Southwestern real estate, right? They're more experience. But what advice would you give for the scaling of it? What tips and tricks did you learn about growing a business so that it's scaled properly? Because sometimes they get too big for their own good. You know what I'm saying?
We went through that a couple of times. Like right now, my company is actually, in terms of headcount, it's very small. I mean, it's not one, but it's small, like we're under 10 people work in the company. And, hey, at one point, at a couple different points, it was more like 30 or 40. So yeah, it's if you got a good idea and you got good support and you know how to sell and you're willing to work hard, you do have to be careful about that. Like, how do you scale properly? And I guess my main advice would be, I guess it's two things. One is, and because this is where I think proper manifestation of what you actually want, it always starts, is with a clear vision, like a clear mental picture of really what you want and why you want that.
That's great.
And then simultaneously not worrying too much, being very open about the how, right? Like, this is one of the things that we teach in our workshops, is like where your thought energy can go anytime you're thinking about, okay, achieving a goal or scaling a business or making money or living the life of your dreams. Your thoughts, I mean, this is one of the biggest things that we learn in the book business, is that it all starts upstairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your thought, like if you want to get specific about it, what we've kind of figured out is that your thought energy, in its simplest terms, can either be on, your thoughts can either go towards, what do I want? why do I want that? Or how do I get there? Like any thought that you have about growing your business and making it work is going to be in the category of what do I want? Why do I want that? Or how do we make that happen? And most people spend all of their time thinking about, they spend all of their time with their mind on how do I get there, right? Like 90% of their thoughts are about how. And which means by definition that they spend very little time focusing on what do I want in the first place and why do I want that thing? And it's just, I find it's a little counterintuitive, but it really is true that when you want to make shit happen with your mind, if you have a clear, when you're clear, mentor of mine, Janet Atwood, says this all the time. When you're clear about what you want will show up, but only to the degree that you're clear.
Ooh, that's good. Write that down.
Yeah, you can listen. You didn't know you were going to get good. You thought we were just going to have fun tonight. You didn't know you were going to be getting some of the goodness.
Yeah, I mean, I knew we were going to get a lot of gold, man.
Oh, so and I have really found that to be true. Like, and the other thing about that is that when you're clear, like when you're crystal clear about what you want and why you want that, it's kind of amazing how, like, just the how you get there kind of tends to take care of itself. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I
do.
In unpredictable kind of magical ways. Yeah, that's a big part of how I've made a business that works pretty well.
That is so good. It's so good. I love it. It reminds me of Start With Why with Simon Sinek.
It's a little bit like that. Yep.
Yeah. He focuses more on why, not necessarily what, but I think it's what is also important too. Like you mentioned. So that's,
you need
really,
your brain needs a good dose of what and why. And it doesn't need nearly as much how as people think that it does.
That's brilliant. Yeah. That's so good, man. That's so good. You are.
Stick with me, kid. You might learn something.
You're a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry. That's brilliant.
That's funny.
Wow. Well, let's jump into how you got into Southwestern. Before that, we'll talk a little bit about some of our partners, and then we'll jump into some of the funny stories. Do you know Pat, right?
Pat, you're gonna need to be more specific.
Roach. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know Pat. Pat was always on before, like right before me, at sales school. Pat always, or maybe not always, but Pat always did when I was doing the keynote, Pat would do the balloon talk.
Yes, brilliant.
And it was great. Good. So yeah. Pat and I hung out backstage at TPAC, not TPAC, the War Memorial. Yeah, Pat and I hung out backstage a lot and told each other how awesome we were.
Yeah, man.
So, anyways.
Sorry. I love Pat. No, he, of course he does real estate, right? So check it out. 99% drama free. I love his approach to business. Actually, it's something that it reminds me of kind of what you're saying. And I think he did a really good job with Southwestern Real Estate as well. So we're partnered with them. In the industry of real estate, it's pretty lucrative. But a lot of mediocre standards, a lot of people turnover is like 95% of most registered agents. They fall off after the first year in the industry. But with Pat, over 15 years, it's actually literally the opposite. Like 95% of his agents have stayed. All of our partners, our jockeys, our sponsors are all like alumni. And one of my favorites is Pat, just because of the fact that he's able to create that like culture with Southwestern. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of made it hard for you to mess up doing real estate. So
it's genius move on his part and their part.
Dude, he's a smart man. Yeah, he's a great guy. So anyway, if you guys are looking for something to do, if you guys are kind of looking into the real estate business, right now it's been kind of crazy, and it's kind of a good time to jump into real estate. So if you're listening to this and you're looking for some of the healthier aspects of the culture of Southwestern and get into some real estate, hey, reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with Pat. You get an automatic interview if you sell books with Pat. So it's a win-win for you. You get to sit down with one of the legends of the book field.
Just don't screw it up.
Yeah, don't screw up that interview.
As my sales manager used to say to me, don't screw it up.
Yeah, just don't mess it up, which puts a lot of pressure on. Well, that's brilliant. Oh man. And then also we're brought to you guys by Martine and Lukasz. And so when it comes to partying, and I know this because they actually did my wedding, the only parties that are worth having are the ones that you kind of don't ever forget. Again, my wife is very thankful for this as well. But if you're celebrating something, you get a wedding, you got a trip to Mexico coming up, awards banquet, anything, maybe just a get together. You guys got to hit up Martine and Lukasz. They're DJs, and they have the best of experience when it comes to like just really bringing a party to life. They're book guys, obviously. Most DJs kind of mess up. Like you kind of think of like have a bad DJ, they charge either too much. They don't really have a really good set of music. But these guys are studs. They have a ton of playlists. They range. So even if you're looking into country, rap, EDM, whatever it is, make sure you guys reach out to us. They did some salsa for my wedding. It was super fun. But anything to, yeah, baby, anything to fit your vibe, they're there for you. So of course, you can know that they're reliable just because of the fact that they're book people. It's one of those things where it's like it's pretty simple. And if you're a book person looking to set up an event and you want some music, they're pretty affordable, especially if you're a book person. They give a pretty solid discount for book people. So ball out on a budget is what we'd like to say. We'll get you in touch with them. If you're having an event, reach out to us. We'll get you that discount with Martine and Lukasz. They also did the Freddies, which they were the first DJs ever to do the Freddies. That's right. And then again, now it's time to recognize some people from Cardinal. Actually, I love this part of our new partnership with Cardinal just because we don't really talk about the company as much. We just get to recognize some of the people that are crushing it. So one of the things that we'd like to bring in mind is they've been actually cranking the way that they are set up, and the way that they have set up like the training for people is just so good for you to get off to a hot start. So their top 10 agents all grossed over 10K in revenue last week. And so we're going to recognize some of the people. The average was about 12K of gross revenue. And the average time worked for between all of those top 10 was about 32 hours on the field. So they're working smart and hard, it sounds like. So, but I like to do this kind of like the way you did it in the circle. So here's all the people that did over 10. It was Baron Morris, Ian Pinzado, Nate Alberts, DJ Acosta, Aben Dominguez, Dan Morgan, and Eric Nicholson. These are all book people. So 1, 2, 3, how you do it. But there's 10K, and then there's people that did better than that. So we're going to give a shout out to Kiara as well. Kiara Adame. She just got started in November, and this week she closed 12K of gross revenue. She's crushing it. Big shout out as well to our home girl, Greta Huerta. She did 13K. She was a previous guest on the show. 13K in gross revenue this week. This is a shout out to them. And of course, we got in the number one spot. There can only be one number one. Isaac McConkey. He did 24K in revenue. This just last week is insane. So if that sounds interesting to you, again, we mentioned this at the beginning of the top of the show, but if it sounds interesting to you, make sure you guys reach out to us. Or if you want to refer yourself or refer another bookman or woman that might be looking for something new or just kind of unhappy with where they're at. Cardinal is, of course, taking on new folks. They're hiring. So for next week, again, there's a $500 bonus for any referrals that get hired on. And then you can put your name into a hat. Every 5 people that get referred, one of those people is going to get a trip to BIZZLER, which, by the way, I'm inviting you, Roger, to BIZZLER if you want to come out. August 15th through the 19th. Got to get you out there.
That might be an offer that's too good to refuse.
I'm telling you, man.
We'll see.
If you come, we'll get everyone else to come. There's a lot of people coming, so we'll let you know.
Okay.
We'll talk after the show.
Okay.
Get you set up. Get you signed up.
It's a story for another time.
That's a story for another time, man. All right. Now, speaking of story for this time, so let's roll back the clock. 1989, a pivotal summer in young Roger's life.
Yep.
I always like hanging into the first summer. We can talk about all 9, but usually the first one's the one that's like, right, because it changes your life the most.
That's the one that changes your life the most. Yeah.
Yeah. And so who the heck were you? How did you get into this whole thing? Let's go back. Tell me about it.
Okay, so I was a freshman at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and I was doing fine. Yeah, at the time, Madison was like powerhouse campus. Like UW Madison in 1989 was like, Bulgaria is now.
Yes. Just top of the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, University of Tallinn, in Estonia is now like Yeah, my first couple summers and the previous summer, we were number one. I obviously didn't know this when I was a freshman because I didn't really know what Southwestern was, except that I kind of did. So what happened was, I was a victim of a survey. I went to computer science. I went to Comp Sci 101, and one of my classmates was a guy named Todd Meister, who he handed out surveys. It turns out, I had no idea at the time. I found this out as I was like, once I got the call, Meister had been the number one first year in the company the year before, and he was just recruiting. So he surveyed the class. I filled out the survey. I think it was in like February or March of that year. I was about to turn 19, and I was in the middle of figuring, okay, I know I want to make some money this summer, but beyond that, I didn't really have it figured out. And yeah, he called me, and he's like, "Do you want to come to the information session?" Sure. What's the deal? He's like, "Well," I was like, "What did you say about the money?" He's like, "Well, so I made like $20,000 last summer." I was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, excuse me? Like, that was enough. Like, in 1989, that was enough to pay for all of college.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy to say.
It's
amazing.
Crazy, like, it's bananas. Now my kids are getting ready to go to college, and I'm like, 20 grand pays for like an hour of college now.
Yeah.
He's like, not everybody does that well. I mean, average is like $7,000. And I was like, well, all right, that's still pretty darn good. Yeah, sure, I'll come. So I went to the interview, and it was JT Olson, our sales leader at the time. And this was the second time that I had the experience of like, oh my God, I want to be that guy. It was, yes. I was like, just super impressed with him. I was highly on like scam alert. But I was like, dude, this guy's awesome. And so then I had this out of body experience in the interview. Like, it was I flashed back to like 2 years prior, when the bookman came to my house before my senior year of high school.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wait a second. Hold on. This was Neil Murray's gig. Because I remembered that. I still remember that experience in vivid detail. He came by on a Saturday, knocked on the door. He was from UCLA. He was selling in my neighborhood. And we were textbook, except the fact that I was going into my senior year. I only had 1 year of school left. But like, Neil showed up at like 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon, and I was the only one around, and he dropped like everybody's name. He was like, "Oh, do you know Mike Sefton? And do you know Glenn Wells? And do you know Lanny Glenn?" I was like, "Yeah, these are all my friends." They're like, "Yeah, they all signed up to get these books from me." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, you probably need to talk to my mom, right?" He's like, "Yeah." Like, yeah, come back at 9:00. So he came back, like he did the like 9:30 on a Saturday night thing.
We should get him on this show and then have him.
I don't even know where he'd be able to find it. He probably, Neil Murray, I'm sure, has no idea. But I'm sure he doesn't remember me, but I remembered him really well. And the thing that I remembered is I remember knowing enough about like making presentations, because I had done some stuff in high school. That I remember sitting like on my couch with my mom and Neil, and it was like the classic like textbook setup. And I remembering him showing, like doing the demo, and I just remember going, okay, this has got to be rehearsed. Like, there's no way that this guy is making this up as he goes. Like, this has got to be like I didn't understand sales, but I understood lines, right? Like, I'd been in plays. I was like, this has got to be lines. And I'm like, but he's so damn good at it It doesn't sound like lines. It doesn't feel like he's just like, this is freaking amazing. I'm like, I was so impressed by just how good he was. And I was like, all right, well, I'm like, Mom, just, I don't know if I'll use these books, but we got to buy them. Like,
this guy walked around a parking lot probably rehearsing these lines. Let me tell you.
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that part, but I was super impressed by the whole process. And I still remember it like super vividly. So anyways, fast forward, I'm in the interview and I'm like, wait a minute, is this that? And then, you know, the point in the informational session came where they, you know, pull out the books and somebody gives the demo. And I was like, oh my God, it is that.
That's
so hilarious. I was like, I'm totally doing this. But I was also like, okay, I'm totally doing this. I know, I actually know this. I love this guy. There's not a chance in hell that I'm signing up tonight. I just didn't like, I had it in my head that I was like, I don't want to look like a sucker. So yeah, so JT picked me to sit, like JT sat with me for, I don't even know how long after the interview, just closing me like 8 million times. And I was like, JT, like, this is awesome. I am not signing up tonight. And he's like, all right. Finally, after like an hour, he's like, okay. So I set up a meeting to meet with Todd Meister 2 days later, and I signed up, and that was how I got started. And
that's how you got recruited.
From that point, I was all in.
Wow.
I was excited. I sucked my first summer, but I was all in.
Was this like closer to sales school, or did you have time to prep, or like what was that like kind of training build-up?
Yeah, process? so that was that. Like I said, that was in, I think it was in early March that I signed up in sales. So I had a couple months, and I was like, I was the guy that, like, I studied. JT was always about work hard, study hard, be teachable. If you can work hard, study hard, be teachable, you'll do well in this business. So I set to work memorizing. I got together with a couple other guys on my team. We had a small little team. It was like a 5-person team, but like we were like number 6 or 7 in the company because we were very, very well trained. I was like, if we had a 6-person team, and I think I was number 5 on that team. With some studs on that team that did really, really well that summer. But yeah, man, I literally knew the sales talk backwards.
Like, knew the lines.
I knew. I was like, okay, I got to learn my lines. I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm extremely childish. But I know I got to learn my lines, anyways. So I was good at that, and sales school blew my mind, and then I just got the crap kicked out of me for my first couple of weeks. I just got the crap kicked out of me. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, so we'll get into that summer because I want to hear about that. I also want to hear about, like, especially now that we talk about like seeing a speaker that's, engaging. I mean, you saw more live.
That was another time where I was like, I was one of the, that was the last year that Mort was there. Like, he passed away after my first summer, I think.
Yeah, that's when they recorded it, wasn't it? Like, I remember that was the same summer. I know it was like somewhere in the 90s. I thought it was like later, but I don't know.
Maybe I saw him live my second summer as well, but it certainly wasn't my third summer. Like, I saw him I saw one of the last live Mort Utley keynote speeches, and I totally was like, I want to be that guy. Like, I thought I wanted to be JT. I thought I wanted to be JT Olson, but I really want to be that guy.
But you were both.
Eventually, yeah.
You did the thing. Gosh, dude, what Mort Utley in person must have been. I mean, you watch him still. You can YouTube his speech. You watch him still, and you're like, this is. I mean, I showed it to my wife yesterday because she's like, so who's this Mort guy? And I'm like, babe. And we turn on the tape. And we, I want to win. I want to win. And she goes, he's just so good. Like, he's fucking brilliant. Like, what was it like in person?
It's probably not even fair to ask me that because I was in full, like when I saw Mort live, I mean, it was, 10 o'clock on Thursday night at sales school. I haven't slept in a week. I mean, I've just been like mainlining the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like for a week.
You're snorting it straight. You're not even drinking it. You're just
I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking it. I'm just like emptying the packet out and just, just like I'm whipping up concoctions and just jacking it into my veins. Like I was out of my mind.
Hitting a Kool-Aid on a spoon.
I haven't slept in a week. Like I've just been,
And then this man comes on stage,
just practicing approaching, and then this white-haired dude shows up and gives like the most bestest inspirational speech ever. So like, I mean, what do you think? I mean, it was amazing. I was like, and I mean, and like we were fortunate enough to be in one of the bigger sales schools. So there's like 1,500 people in the room. Just the noise, and it's just the electricity, and it was just mob scene. So it was pretty classic.
And then he drops classics like, with all this manure, there's
with all this manure, there's got to be a pony somewhere. Yeah.
Yes.
Come on, man.
Just electric. Your hair stands.
It'll change your life. So yeah, I remember, like as a manager, learning that really the purpose of sales school. The purpose of sales school is really just to get you through your first week.
Yeah.
Right. Some people would tell you that the purpose of sales school, like all that energy goes into just making sure, into just helping you not quit on day one.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and then after that, the novelty wears off, and like it's all about how are you taken care of, and who are you as a person, and how are you managed, and do you get a good PC and all that sort of thing. But yeah, that was a wild experience, man.
So brilliant. So now let's get into your first summer, and then I also want to talk about what it was like watching Zizzy and Rosen go at it. But but your summer specifically, you said you got humbled a little bit. You kind of learned the hard parts. What was it for you like? And did you ever have a moment where you're like, I might quit? And some people have shared that moment. Some people never really had that thought. What was it like for you?
Yeah. So the deal with me was that fundamentally, I was when it came to the book business, I had the tools to be good at it, but fundamentally I was just a child. I mean, I was a child. I was an only child, and I was very fortunate in that I grew up with parents that loved me and took good care of me, and kind of let me do my thing. And like most stuff had come, I don't have an origin story of scrambling and clawing my way out of my country. As a suburban white kid, which meant I showed up to the book business just like primed to get my teeth kicked in. And yeah, I sucked.
Just eating manure.
Yeah, I mean, like I when I was on stage when I did the keynote, one of the things that I always talked about is it really is not how you start. And this is a thing that I learned in the book business, but it's completely true. It really is not how you start, it's how you finish, which is fortunate for me, because it turned out I was so, like, when it came down to actually doing it, I learned very quickly that just knowing your lines was not the whole deal. Like, I was knowing your lines was a really small part of it. And so, yeah, man, I've told the story how so my first house, I knocked, I was like, all right, let's go. And I ran up to the door and knocked on the door. And it was 7:50. It was 7:59 a.m. And I happened to knock on the door of like a 95-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And just got her out of bed. And she didn't open the door. She just looked at me through the window and was just like, whatever you're doing. All I
might as well just be one of these. Like, just go F yourself. Like, get out of my face.
Yeah, and she's like, she's wearing curlers and moo and like, probably a diaper. Like,
yeah.
And so I was like, I didn't know what to do with that, so I just left. And then, like, on my way to the house next door, like, the sky just opened up, and it just dumped rain on me. And that was the beginning of 21 days straight of rain in my first summer. Like, it just rained. It was in Syracuse, New York, and it just rained all day, every day for the first 3 weeks.
You did. That is part of your keynote. I do.
Oh yeah, yeah. I procured the psycho killer black garbage bag at my next house, and and then a couple hours later, I finally got into a house and sold called the Treasured Tales of Childhood, and then my first sale they canceled before I got out the door. They canceled to my face, actually. Like, they wrote me the check. Yeah,
you remember her name, right? Her name was
I've repressed her name. I've repressed their name I don't remember their name.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first woman that actually bought a My Fun with Words bought the Moo-Foo from me. Yeah, man. I'm still wearing my garbage bag. The sky had cleared a little bit. That I'm just like, I'm just braising, steaming in my garbage bag on her porch. She writes me the check and she's like, "Hey, I have a question. Am I your first sale?" Like, I was literally so bad that my customers could tell how bad I was. Like, they tell you, right? Like, they tell you in sales school that your customers don't know how bad you are. I was bad that my customers knew how bad I was.
They knew.
Told me.
Like,
they knew.
This kid sucks.
She's like, She's like, I gotta have a question. Am I your first sale? I'm like,
you suck. Is this the first time?
Actually, yes. She's like, wait, am I your first sale ever? I'm like, yeah, this is my first day. Why do you ask? She's like, well, I can just tell that you're a little new. You'll be fine though.
And boy, were you.
That was my first sale.
Wow. Cheers to that.
So yeah, it was I probably had my first impulse to quit. I don't remember. I don't really remember having, like your classic dirt pile moment, a la Lee McCroskey. But I definitely was like, I just want to go home. Fortunately, this is a story that most people probably don't know, but a lot of book people have experienced this. I did feel like I was taken care of, but I was definitely taken care of by the individual upstairs all along the way. And like day 3 was this was awesome though. Like, day 1, I think I did like 20 units my first day. Like, I actually stumbled into some sales, and then day 2 was a 0 day. Day 3 was rough too, but at the end of it, like my last house, I had a lot of good last house stories my first summer. My last house of day 3, Vern Kaufman, dude, I pulled that out. Well, I'll never forget his first name, because I walked up to I'm delirious at this point. It's 9:00 on Thursday, and I haven't really sold much, and I don't really know where I am anymore. And my pre-approach is just a ball of goo, and Mom answers the door, and it's dark, and like, hey, I'm Roger. I'm the guy that's been going around showing everybody the Southwestern study guides. And she goes, wait a second. What did you say? I was like, I'm the one that's showing everybody the Southwestern study guides. Because like that was my lines, right? And she goes, did you say Southwestern? I was like, yeah. She goes, hold on. She just turns and she goes, Vern, the bookman's here. I was like, what is happening? She goes, come on in. And Vern had sold books.
Yeah.
Vern had sold. He was the only guy in Syracuse, New York at the time, apparently, Vern had sold books for I think one summer, but they were like, come on in, make this man some food, get this kid some lemonade, and get the checkbook. It was awesome.
Brilliant. I never sold to an alumni. God,
it was.
That must be so cool.
Yeah, that was. I was at least savvy enough to go, thank you. I was like, because I really needed that. At that point, I really needed a win. Yeah.
You sold in upstate New York. That was my first summer too. I sold in just south of Rochester in a town called Wellsville and Hornell. You familiar with that area? I don't know if you remember that. It's just up in that area for sure. Yeah, that's so crazy. And alumni, just like, hey, get this guy some, get him a blanket.
Please,
you're like,
sit down, take your shoes off, relax. You can give me the sales talk if you want to. Mostly just, eat some dinner. I understand what you've been going through, and like, we'll just take it.
Okay. That's brilliant, man.
Yeah, that's great. So that was a helpful day.
But then, how did you know? Oh, actually, and I'm going to pause you really quick for a second. I think your zipper is catching on the microphone?
Oh, sorry about that. Yep, I got to be more good. I get a little.
Oh, you could also unzip, and maybe that'll help with so that way just touching your shirt, so that way it doesn't make a.
What kind of podcast is? What kind of podcast is this?
This is the Uncensored Ponytails podcast. We're out here.
Okay, here we go. Maybe that's a little better.
Woo! The Nike with the Nike orange. Let's go. We're not sponsored by Nike, but we could be.
No. But you do have really good sponsors, by the way. If you're going to talk about your sponsors, can I put in a plug for some of your sponsors?
Sure. Yeah, that's not coming up again until later, but this is where you come in. Go.
They're awesome. I didn't know that you had a partnership with Cardinal Senior Benefits. I had the opportunity to speak for those guys. I was about a year ago, and I really if there's anybody out there looking for a very similar experience to the book field without the actual going out and knocking on doors and making cold calls, that's a great place to exercise those capabilities and make a ton of money and make a big difference for people. Sorry. I was inspired to say that because I know those guys.
You're welcome to. Yeah, they're great. And of course, they're our latest, we call them jockeys, all our sponsors. But we kept it straight with, we kept it with just pony with Southwestern people. It's like pony related, but like it was just because we had offers from other companies that were like, we want to sponsor you. I'm like, nah, if they're not related to Southwestern, like I not like directly, as in like if they're not people who sold books, I don't want to. I wanted to keep it in the family. Because our why is to bring the network to life, and our what is through podcasts. So look at that. We're there. That is so brilliant. So you talked about, and this is something that was huge in the Gates philosophy, right? That you would share in your keynote. But like when you talked about, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. So what carried you through that summer? How did that summer end up for you? And how did you decide that you want to come back for not only one more, but 8 more after that? Like what was the transition of that whole summer that led you to like go, holy cow, I can do this?
Yeah, I finally like figured it out. It took me. So I ended up, I was not a top sales. I was not a top sales. I didn't get my picture in the book my first summer. Do they even have a book anymore?
Yeah.
Is the Superstar book still, is it still a book?
Yes, and for people listening, with the super, if you didn't sell books, the superstar book is when like the top 150 rookies and then the top
Yeah.
75 managers all get put in this
Yeah.
book and they get celebrated. And you did amazing. That's so great. So
Correct.
you didn't make
So
that book. Okay.
I did not get I got my name in the book. I made the Century Club. Like if it was the top 50 rookies, I was like number 58. So like I did okay. But up until like my last probably 3 weeks, like probably my first 9 of 12 weeks, well, I got better and I grew and I learned a ton and I became like an actual adult in the process. But all of the business that I did was strictly due to the law of averages. Strictly because I was like, they told me to show the books 30 times a day and work from 7:59 until 9:30, and I did that. And it was strictly the law of averages until like towards the end, I was like, oh, okay, I just made a sale and I actually knew what I was doing that time. And I got the I Want to Win award, which was cool. Like I finished that first summer I finished it pretty well. And yeah, like once that happened, I kind of knew about halfway through the summer. I was like, all right, this sucks, but I'm like, I just need another shot at this. Like I if I can do this again, I've always been a slow starter at like literally everything I've ever done. Riding a bike, learning to talk, and definitely in the book business. Like, and I knew I just was a slow starter. And so I knew I wanted a second shot at it, and it actually really fired me up when they offered me a second, they offered me a second contract. They offered me the opportunity to come back. I was like, oh yes, yeah. And that was actually what propelled me to my first I Want to Win week.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
But I got to tell this story because this one's not super well known. I was really fortunate to have good role models that I worked with my first summer. My OL was a guy named Don Meyer, who was just an unbelievably good guy. He was number one in the company. He was like one of the first guys to get over 10,000 units regularly in a summer. So somewhere around week 4, it was Monday of week 4. I got to follow him, and it was the most enraging experience but it was probably the single biggest day of learning about sales and business and life ever. Like if I ever talk to him, we still reminisce about that day because I remember all kinds of details about that day. And that was the day where I started to, so my first summer, I told you I was all in on everything, except there was one thing that I was not in on at all. Positive phrases.
Oh man, we have a similar first summer, my man.
I refused to buy the idea of positive phrases out loud. Like everything, which is a weird thing to be like. Every other Kool-Aid drinking aspect of the business, I was like, great, I'll cold shower at 6:03 a.m. no problem. But wake up and say it's going to be a great day, not doing it. That's just cult level weird. I can't handle it. I'm not going to do it. And then, and I noticed, I was like, yeah, that's for lamos. And I got in the car with Don on this Monday. And I mean, like he was legitimately just going and cranking out 200 unit days when nobody, like, I know that's kind of commonplace now. Like, nowadays you can go out and have like one customer and have a 200 unit day.
It was like Rosen, Zizzy, and him like doing that. And
yeah, it was kind of, yeah, it kind of like that. And so I watched it, and he was like all day long. He was like, I'm alert, alive, friendly, cordial, firm, and enthusiastic. I feel good. I feel great. I feel wonderful. Everybody's getting them. And the one that got me was he was always saying, everybody's getting them. Everybody loves me. Everybody buys from me. Everybody's getting them. Everybody's getting them. And I was like, this guy's such a weirdo. What a dork. And then he went and did the same sale. He said the same lines that I was saying. And first house we went to, they bought all the kids' books. And then the next house we went to, they bought everything. And then the next house they went to, bought a VL and a Mufu. And I was like, and all day long, he's like, I'm gonna beat Gwen. I'm gonna beat so and so, and this, and everybody's getting them. Everybody loves me, and everybody's buying from me, and everybody's getting them. And somewhere in about the middle of the day, I was like, wait a second. I was getting mad because I was like, for God's sakes, in my own mind, I'm like, Don, fucking everybody buys from you. Like, nobody buys from me. Everybody buys from you. Like, we sold every single person that we sat down with. He sold a volume library to a woman who had bought the volume library the summer before.
Oh no, that's a slap to your face as a person. You're like, what the
I was like,
this?
literally, he had it was like 3:00 in the afternoon, and by like 3:00 in the afternoon, he had like 8 customers, and he was sitting on like 150 units, and I was like, what? Dude, you just sold more in 3 hours than I've sold in a week so far. What? I was so upset. And we sit down in this, we're out in the country in upstate New York, nice house, and we're talking to this woman, Chris Rinaldi. This one, I will never forget this woman's name. And they're talking, and I'm like, here we go again. Like, it's going perfectly. And, she's super into it, and he's doing the, Acme introduction, and he's doing the thing. And I'm like, here we go again. And he pulls out the books. I'm like, we know how this story ends. And she goes, you're selling volume library. Oh, we have that. And Don was like, what? You have this? She's like, yeah. We bought it in, we bought it last summer. It's great. We love it. And I was like, all right.
You're done.
Finally. Like,
Stumped.
There's no way you're going to, in my head, I'm like, there's no way you're selling this woman. There's no way this is happening. Like, she just bought it a year ago. And he goes, "What? Well, wait a second. Did you say that this was maybe the single best piece of book field salesmanship I've ever seen?" He goes, "Oh, wait a second. Didn't you say that you have 2 houses? Like, did I get that? That you have a house in Boston, and then this is like your almost like your summer home?" And she's like, yeah, we have a house in Boston. And he goes, and we had also established that she had a set of encyclopedias, which for those of you that are young, like, there used to be these things called encyclopedias.
Comedian at heart, Roger Seip.
She had a set of encyclopedias at both houses. So Don goes, hold on a second, Chris, do you mean to tell me that you have 2 houses and 2 sets of encyclopedia, but only 1 volume library? Oh no. He goes, oh, mistake. No. And she goes, oh no, God, you better sign me up. And I was like, mother love bone, like, are you okay? And that was the moment where I went, wait a second. He's been saying all day, everybody's getting them. And it's true. Maybe there is something to this positive phrases thing. And then, but I still thought I was too cool to do it until he gave me the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, after that summer.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's along with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that book changed like how I run my life more than anything. And so, and I read that book, and like, so this is a kind of really long way of getting around to this. You were like, okay, what kind of did it for you from that point forward? A big part of it was like that day combined with reading that book and going, okay, self-talk, I get it. And that like that just made all the difference in the world. And it's really funny because like now I think I remember like my ninth, like I became known as the everybody's getting a guy. Like that's all. I just said that all. I literally had I had somebody follow my last summer in outside of Seattle. I had Christy Geiger was following me, who was pretty legendary book woman in her own right. When she was a rookie, she was following me. I was like, hey, I'm a little nutty about this everybody's getting them thing. So would you do me a favor? And I have no, would you just count for me? Just count how many times I say everybody's getting them today. Just keep track of it. And so we're doing our thing. And I mean, it was all like literally all the time. I'd say it 100 times between doors, and I'd say it 50 times in the presentation. Like the whole concept of everybody's getting them, like, was basically the central theme of my whole demo at that point. And we were taking our lunch break, and I was like, hey, so Christy, like, what do you got for a number? She goes, Roger, I lost at 900. It's like, all right, I guess I'm bought in on this positive affirmations thing. Seems to be working.
I mean, when you talk to yourself, brilliant book. If you're listening and you haven't read that, I mean, it's really just your mistake now. Have you read The Untethered Soul?
I have not.
His name, the author. Very similar, but a whole different perspective of it.
Mm-hmm.
Alicia Huck was actually, by the way, great episode. If you guys want to watch, I think it was episode 104.
I was literally just watching that episode before we got started here.
Yeah, she recommended that book to me. I just got through like chapter 7, but very, it's like a different perspective of what to say when you talk to yourself, a little bit more like meditative type vibe. But
yep,
brilliant.
Have you ever read The 4 Agreements?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Also good.
So this is one of the things that I love about that book. That's a book that I give to a lot of my coaching clients. And so I just reread it a few months ago, and I was like reminded of like one of the agreements is about be impeccable with your word, which if you just heard that, you think that just means like live with integrity and do what you say you're going to do and tell the truth and be impeccable with your word. Like your word is bond. But it's actually all about self-talk. It's all about like be impeccable with how you manifest your thoughts and how you talk to yourself. Yeah, it's
brilliant. And what to say when you talk to yourself is so good. The 4 Agreements is really good. I appreciate that as well. And then in the Untethered Soul, it talks about how like the person that is yourself, like is actually like who, like if I was to ask you like who are you, you'd be like, okay, well, you could say something about your career. So you might be like, hey, I'm a coach, right? Or I'm gonna do this. But that's not really who you are. This is kind of what you do. So then you ask, okay, well,
getting deep here. Do you really want to go here, Andres? We're getting deep.
I'm
digging it. Keep going, man. Like I'm digging it. I just want to make sure you know where you're going.
It digs into the point where you talk about like the point that where the person that who you are is just a being that's aware of existence, right? So like you're just all you really are is aware of what's going on in your current predicament, right? Like, so I'm in this room talking to you, right? And you're in that room talking to me, but people listening, whoever, they might be at the gym doing this, or they might be in the car listening to this, or maybe they're live listening right now. They're like, okay, I'm watching YouTube, right?
I hope they're enjoying it wherever they are.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so the book talks about how like when you experience something good, bad, ugly, pretty, whether it's a rejection at a door or like whether it's like divorce, something hard, traumatic, really intense, it's not really you that's experienced that. It's just you're aware that is happening, And so what happens is like you can control that because you're just part of the ride. Does that make sense? So there's a voice in your head, and then there's you, and the voice is you technically, but it's separated because it's the voice noticing what you're going through. And so it teaches you to kind of separate yourself from like the circumstances that you're in to be able to better handle them when they happen to you, good or bad. And so then nothing is surprising, whether it's good or bad, which means that you're much more in control of yourself. And so then you can easily tell yourself and control that voice to be like, I can get through this, again, good or bad, right? So it's I highly recommend. Thank you.
This is some pretty good hippy dippy woo woo awesomeness.
Yeah, that's what the podcast is about. We get into some crazy shit. I always say the vibe of this podcast is like we just bumped into each other at a bar and we found out, oh, wait, you did that too? And then this is a conversation that results from that.
Just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, man. And we just bumped into each other and we're just chopping it up for an hour and a half now.
That's right. By the way, Michelle Mitchell just commented. She's listening from Bend, Oregon. By the way, Michelle is going to be on the show on May 12th. We're looking forward to having you, Michelle. You're awesome. Hum kombucha. Super excited about it. I'll be drinking some hum kombucha on that episode.
You better.
And she's talking about how when you sold in Bend.
Dude, that was great. Yeah, I discovered Bend, Oregon.
Yeah,
I did. Bend, like when 1992, I just graduated, and
great year. I was born that year.
I was just gonna say that's when you were born, wasn't it? That's a truly legendary year, Andres.
Yeah,
that was really fun. Like I went to Bend for a week, basically because everybody had left to go back to school. I still had a trunk load of books that I was going to be taking back to Nashville. And JT was still my sales leader at that time. And he's like, hey, I was like, I don't feel like I'm done with this summer yet. Like everybody's gone. I've delivered all my books. I don't think I'm done yet though. And he's like, you know what you should do? I was like, this is going to sound horrible. You know what you should do, Roger? I was like, what should I do? Bend, Oregon. It's like, what?
Verb or pronoun?
Excuse me?
Yes.
Bend, Oregon? You're going to have to clarify. He's like, no, it's a town. Bend, Oregon. But they say Oregon. I was like, oh. He's like, it's 30,000. It's now like, I don't know, 200,000 people. At the time, it was like a little logging town of 30,000 people in the middle of nowhere, so far away from any place else that nobody had ever sold there. So I was like, hell yeah, let's go, man. It's like, I stopped. It was on the way to Nashville. So I brought my trunk load of books and I was like, all right, I'm going to hang out here in Bend, Oregon till I get rid of these books. And it took like 4 days. People were like, you have payment? It was just really lovely. It was the high desert in summer. It's in like mid-September, so it was like chilly in the morning. It was just great to be out. And the people were super cool. And people were like, "Do you have a payment plan?" I was like, "I got all kinds of payment plans: cash, check, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, or Discover. You have all those options. Here's the plan: I'll give you the books, you give me the money. That's the plan."
Wow.
And people are like, oh, okay.
I'm glad. First of all, thank you, Michelle, for bringing up Bend. And I want to get into your career so far because I know you, Lee McCroskey. I want to go first. We'll go into the watching Bill Zizzy and Dave Rosen, but then just so you know where we're headed, I at some point want to ask you about because you hit like PC like 64 times. Is that what I heard? Is that correct?
I think it was 60 on the nose.
60. Okay, so we'll talk about that because that level of my brother did 24 in a row. And I think Mark Grau has a record for 72, so you're up there. And I've always wondered, like,
I didn't do them in a row. Like there were some weeks in there, like there was a fair number of weeks where I only had 3 days to sell, and I did not hit President's Club during those weeks. But it was 60 total. It was a bunch.
Well, I'm gonna ask you. I have a specific question, a couple questions I have about that. But before that, so let's go back to '89, first summer. You're getting done, so you're figuring it out. But then, this crazy raging battle between two true juggernauts of our company. Like, and I say our internship. It's not my company. It's not your company, but like of our internship. Who then created the most, probably besides your keynote and besides the more Utley speech, probably one of the most popular advanced sales tapes that was ever made. I think. I mean, it's just in the top 5 for sure.
It's top 2 for me in terms of like advanced sales, like to the most iconic. Like nothing is gonna ever be bigger than Dan Moore advanced sales. Like that's like the foundation of
sure.
Like that's like the foundation of
life.
Selling anything. Like that's
fair enough.
I mean, listen, everybody has their opinion, at least for me. But yeah, like I was like when that advanced sales tape was recorded, like I was in the audience. Like that was at Great Recruiters. Damn, after that summer. Like, and I kind of understood that it was history of the. I mean, I was still such an idiot at that time that I didn't really understand what was going on around me. But I was at least like, this is a big, and I mean, I was just like, oh yeah, proud to be a bookman. Oh, you want some cheese to go with your wine? Oh, you want
classic
I'm selling
line.
book. I'm like, we're feeling a little funky. You're not gonna let your sister out, do you? Are you?
Like, just
like all
I
of
got,
that.
And then she gave me $900.
You're like, no. Then she gave no. And then she gave me $900.
Man!
And then she gave me $900.
Oh gosh! Rest in peace, Mr. Zizzy. God, let's have it.
It was great.
Toast to him. Toast to him. Cheers to you, my friend, and cheers to Bill Zizzy, the legend. Dave, thank you for being on the show. If you guys want to check that out, that's episode 42. We had him back in August.
So that night and that experience, I mean, what that did for me is they were doing their thing while I was having my rookie summer, and like your rookie summer, you don't really, unless you're much more mature than I was. Like I didn't really get it. I was like, oh yeah, those guys are selling. I couldn't relate to, hey, Bill Zizzy broke the company record and did 1,400 units this week. Oh, Dave Rosen broke the old record and did 1,500 units this week. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm just trying to get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, man. I couldn't really relate at the time. But when that actually was a really key moment, because I was like, okay, it really opened my mind to really what was possible in that business. And it had a huge impact on, like my second summer. My first week out, my second summer was my best week ever at that time. Right? Like my first week of my second summer was better than any week that I had my first summer. And a lot of it was because of I figured out some form of self-talk, and I was there when Zizzy and Rosen like spewed their magic on everybody one night, and then I kind of knew what was, I kind of had some idea of what was coming, so I wasn't just like in shock all the time. And my second, it was, I think it was my third week of my second summer that I hit President's Club for the first time. And then it was pretty much it wasn't every single week, but it was pretty much every week after that for 8 summers.
Yeah, forever. That's crazy, man. To know, because really, I mean, eventually Dustin Hill has hit the record with like 20,000, and now the record's like 30,000.
That's just like
Peter Svetkov. I think I don't want to mispronounce his name. Peter Petrov. Sorry, Peter. He just hit 30,000 units in one summer. So to give people
that's ridiculous.
Insane. To give people an idea what that means. So Dave Rosen, that 89 summer broke the record with like 13,900 or something odd. It was like almost 14.
Yeah.
He literally more than doubled that last summer. Like to think about the possibility of that, like, just it really just defines like what you believe in yourself. Like, you're like, holy
It's a whole
shit,
new world. It's a whole new world, baby.
yeah, that's what. And then
Well, it does.
Dominica,
It also does help. It also does help when you can go in and sell like 200 units at a time. Like,
yeah, just bananas.
we
I
didn't
mean,
have
that's what
that
you have to
opportunity.
do. I mean, I broke down, like, if you did, like, even if you did like a 15-week summer, that's still like 2,000 units a week. Like,
Yeah.
it's bananas, man.
It's cool. It's
Domin-
very, very cool, and I appreciate it.
It's brilliant. It's good that people are, and they're European, so it's like, hell yeah, good for you guys, because they're, that means so much more to them going home because of the change in dollars, right? They're millionaires there.
Yeah.
Dominica, she broke the record for the biggest week with 3,000 units in a week, which was previously
Saw
held
that.
by Kaya Grady with 2,700. Like, you're just like, what the fuck? Like, the best week I ever had, I think it was like 700 some odd, and you're like,
Yeah.
how
Wait,
do you do
that's not
3,000?
that's nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, like he's a 30,000 unit summer, which, by the way, we are not our units. Based on our conversation earlier, we just are ethereal beings connected to spirit. We are not our units. But
I'm glad you
units
said that.
yeah. But still, though, like it is still kind of mind blowing. Where I'm like, yeah, man, I sold some books back in the day, and dude just broke the record with a summer that's like 4 times bigger than my best.
just insane. We actually we actually have a shirt coming out soon in our merch. It says units on it. YOUNITS. Units.
So you actually are your units.
So just a play on
I
that.
wish somebody would have told me sooner.
You can still buy it. It's launching literally, I think, tomorrow.
I thought I was not my units.
No, you are 100%. You are. That's all we care about.
Okay.
And territory matters 100%. Actually, that one is actually probably a little bit true. Territory does matter a little bit, but
it's
story for another time. But so that's crazy that you watched that, and so shout out to them, celebrations to them. But let me get into your brain a little bit. So there's people that are listening to this that are they're probably still selling books, or they're about to go for however many summers now. They're gearing up. Sales school's probably in a couple of weeks. I never was able to do this, and I never understood how the consistency level could be kept up so high. Because there's one thing that's like, you had a couple. So I had a couple weeks where I had to hit PC. I had a couple. I did that like 3 or 4 times in my career, which sounds great. But when you listen to something like you, where you like did 60 times, or Mark Rao, who did it 72 times, or you get your run
in a row without missing. That was crazy.
Run Alfred hit more 75 times. Like, what? Right? But you're in that realm. So you did it 60 times. How that some of those had to have been like your first week of your second summer, or your first week of your 5th summer, or whatever. Like, so how do you maintain that level of consistency? Like, is it a flow that you get into, and what strategies do you take? As specific as you can get to tell us, to share with us, like, how do you get into that level so that maybe even if you're not selling books, you can kind of like follow this process?
Yeah, and like I didn't know you were going to ask. I'm really glad that you asked this question, because it is totally something.
I didn't either, but here we are.
You're like, I never know what's coming out of my mouth next.
Yeah.
It's 100% something that can be applied to any career, any business, especially if you're selling. So it was, I'd say it was 2 big keys. One of them was, I remember it was another advanced sales thing that I don't think this one ever got recorded, but I remember Tim Ritzer doing an advanced sales talk at sales school.
Shout out to him.
And he was talking, he was the one that I think kind of coined, I don't know if he coined the phrase. For me, he coined the phrase that it's just the ground I walk on. And I was like, oh, when he said that in that place, for me, like it just bent my mind in this really awesome way. Cause I was like, yeah, to me, that level of production was like something that I was like like jumping up and like maybe I'd like bump my head on it, right? Yeah. Like if this is President's Club, like I had to like, I'd have to like bump my head on it. And he's like, no, it's just the ground I walk on. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, that's just the ground I walk on. Like that's just what it is. And so that I was like, huh, that's just kind of how I started to look at it, and that happened, and that was a big key to my consist. And then the other thing is, Fred Prevost said this in an advanced sales program where he that was the first time that I ever started thinking about stuff like just like in today's words, you would talk about just trust the process. Fred used to talk about how a lot of top producers, they don't have a super like emotional purposes, right? They're not like crazy emotional about the job. They don't ride the roller coaster. I mean, a lot of them have like, very deep internal motivation, but a lot of your top producers, they don't necessarily have an emotional purpose that they can come bring themselves to tears at will over. They just take pride in what they do. And they just go freaking do their job. I was like, all right, yeah, I get that. And then I kind of discovered that I like, if I can get into a groove, like it's my favorite thing. Like my favorite way to operate in business is if I can just get into a groove and in a place where I'm just in a good place and I know what I'm doing and it just can be lather, rinse, repeat for as long as it needs to be. I personally, I like that, but it was definitely a mental thing for me. I mean, if you're asking about how do you achieve a level of consistency, that was it for me. Like when I realized, yeah, this is not something I got to bump my head on. It's the ground that I walk on, and then it's okay to be boring, and just go crank,
Yeah, I mean,
like
okay.
People. No, go ahead. I'll shut up. Go ahead.
No, you go. I was gonna say, can I dig into that? But tell me what you're gonna say, and then I'm gonna dig into.
I remember this because, like, my last bunch of summers, it was that this was when I had started doing stand up, and I was getting pretty excited about, like, I loved I was a crowd. I tried real hard to be a crowd pleaser, and I liked being in front of the crowd at the time. And so, like, when people would come and follow me on as we were selling books, like, I think people thought, like, I think sometimes people might have been a little like a little disappointed in how boring it was to hang out with me all day on the book field. Because it was honestly, I mean, we had a good time. I had a lot of fun with the people that I was with. I had a lot of fun with my customers, but it wasn't a big spectacle. Like once I figured out how to do the job, I really enjoyed just kind of being in a flow and just going all day. It led to a lot of stamina. But yeah, I think when people would come and be like, oh my God, like this is gonna be so crazy following Roger Seip. And it just wasn't. It was just like my life on the book. I loved it because it was such a simple place, and I really just kind of enjoyed that. It's okay to be boring. It's okay to have fun, but it's okay to be boring too.
But there's something in there too, because let me dig into that, because I'm asking maybe personally, but people who are listening, maybe they can relate, maybe they cannot. So I remember hitting PC. I remember hitting a couple. I had a couple of weeks. So I hit PC. I had 609. I think it was like 700 some odd. I had another 650 or something, and then I had a 600 on the dot. And then I got a couple of 500. So I'm aware of what it's like to like have a good week. I've always said you don't accidentally anything above 400. You don't accidentally do that. You can accidentally hit 300 units by just bumping into a couple ponies.
I did that a couple times my first summer.
Yeah, you just bump into some people, and then there's 300. Yeah. But if you're 400 or above, there's something that you figured out, because on average, you sold 80 units or something like that. Like
you're doing that on purpose.
Yes, you hit 500 on purpose. You don't accidentally hit 500. You hit 400 maybe by accident. Once you start getting into like 5 or up, you're doing something
Right.
That makes sense. And then actually, in my opinion, I never hit more, but in my opinion, between 5 and 1,000, it's actually just a couple of tweaks
Totally.
that you're doing. And so you're there, you're just like right there. So maybe if you're listening to this and you're on the book field and you're hitting 700 units, more is like, it's not more than you think. It's literally the jump between 5 to 1,000. It's much, much, much smaller than 0 to 500, in my opinion. From,
I
again, I
would
never
agree.
hit it, but I'm
Agree.
assuming that's what it is.
I would agree.
So the reason I'm asking this is because so I know what it's like to be in that flow where you're just like, and then they bought, and then they bought, and then that person bought, your names are clicking, right? You had the teacher that bought, or the principal that bought, or the cop that bought, and you're just using that name and it works. And then I also know what it's like to not do that. So my first and second summer, had a decent summers, and then my third and fourth completely off schedule, way unmotivated, not there. So I've seen both sides, right? So I guess what I want to dig into is like, how do you shake the shitty parts, right? So how do you, because I didn't know how I got into flow, but once I was there, I'm like, ooh, I'm cruising. And then, everybody was buying. And I did it different ways. My first summer when I hit PC, I was selling bombs. It was like 70 unit packages, 50 unit packages, 60 unit packages. I mean, people who were buying,
I rarely did that.
Oh, I mean, it was crazy. I was like, how am I didn't, people were asking me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I honestly don't know. I'm just like showing all the things. And then people go, I want all of it. And then they would buy. I had no way to coach. My second summer, it was the opposite. I did more like a machine gun where it's like I had a lot of customers. And so it was like 20 unit packages, but I had a ton of people saying yes because of the names. So
I
I've
always
seen it
found
both
that
ways.
to be more fun.
Yes, that's true. It was so much more fun. I found that
to be more fun. I dove into that.
Yeah. So my question for you, I'm coming from this, is like, so then there were other weeks where I was completely not good. So how did you make it so that your level of expectation, like what did you go through? Maybe it was like a pre-ritual before the summer. Like what things did you like prep yourself for that you were like, yeah, this makes sense that I'm hitting 100 units on average a day? Like how did you get past that?
You're right that it was all about rituals, but it wasn't about before the summer. It was during the summer. Like,
oh, okay.
It was totally like one of the things that I work on with my coaching clients now, and I write about, like, it's a full chapter in my first book, Train Your Brain for Success, is all, like, I call it the power hour now, but it's that whole little victories thing. It's the whole thing about, like, how do you start your day? Like, it really was. Okay, so you had Tim Goss on the show in your Valentine's week.
Yeah, and he talked about Tim keynote. I noticed.
Yeah, Tim was awesome. Tim was a great that headquarters was, man. Yeah, me and Tim and Beaker in a friggin' mansion on the that was a fun time.
Yeah, he talked about that. And by the way, shout out to Tim and Sarah. They're awesome humans. Like, just love.
I love those guys.
They're great.
I'm sure that he would remember this because it was probably right about that time that I really got into this whole little victories thing. And one of the things was I knew that I was a customer's. I knew that I was not a dropping bombs book man. I kind of figured out somewhere around like my third or fourth summer that I was like, I just, like, because if you're going to drop if you're going to drop bombs, you got to be consistent. Like you can't do that when you're not working big brick, right? Like when you're not, right. Like if someone's going to give you $900, they got to have $900 to give you,
Yes.
And I just found that when I was on the book field, I really enjoyed working out in the country, and like I just enjoyed working with like middle to kind of maybe upper middle class people, maybe even a little bit lower middle class people. I was like, great. I'm gonna need to get a lot of yeses. I'm gonna need to make sure that I'm doing good quality business, but I'm gonna need to go and get a lot of yeses. Like I'm not gonna hit my goals getting 2 yeses a day. So I totally did the thing where, that this was back in the day where it was the not carbon copies, Yeah, carbon copy, like the order books where you had to like write them out. It wasn't.
Oh yeah.
You know, these kids and their apps these days, we didn't have that back in my day. Back in my day, we had to use multicolored pens.
Would you believe I did that in 2012? They were
We had
still
to
doing
write in a notebook. Do you even know what a notebook is, you whippersnapper?
the bar was still on paper.
Yeah, man. But I did the thing where like part of my day was I wrote up. I would
Oh,
pre-write. I would pre-write 10, or I was all about 10 customers a day. Like I didn't really care. I tried really hard not to focus on units. I just tried to focus on going out and getting 10 customers a day. So I'd write them up.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'd write. I mean, obviously, I didn't fill in their names, but I'd do everything that you could do to fill in the order form. I would do it at breakfast. You know, I'd be eating my eggs and drinking my coffee, and I'd be filling out order forms, and I'd do 10 of them. And like my whole, like, then once I did that, my whole focus would be just like, okay, let's get to a clean one. Like, that's like all I thought about all day was like, let's get to one where there ain't no ink on it. It made life very simple.
Okay, hold on. That right there is probably the most gold nugget so far. And there've been a lot of gold nuggets, but I'm gonna need to pause right there because there's people listening who might not understand what you mean by that. And I'm gonna explain, fill in the details here, but where I miss it. But basically, what that means is when we had order forms, you had to write down like the number, the order number, the order, all that stuff, like write all that stuff. So
date,
and I actually
you had to write the date.
dates.
You had to write the date.
Yes,
today's date.
This is brilliant that you're saying this. So this is talking about having high expectations versus low expectations. So the cost of having low expectations versus the cost of an order pad. So what happens is they would send you an order pad and they would only have like 50 total orders that you could fill out, potential orders, right? They're blank orders per sheet. And those cost like, I don't know, $25 to get sent to you, and they come out of your own pocket.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is you would fill out like, okay, order number 7 or whatever. I would always, but depending on the week 7, so 701. So that's my first customer of week 7. So 701, 702, and you'd fill out through 710. But what happens is if you went out that date, since you put the date on them, if you went out and you only had 2 customers, then you would essentially have to rip out 8 of them. And so now the order pad only has 42 people in it. And so you would actually burn through order pads every time you didn't hit those 10 customers.
You would lose a little bit of money.
You would lose money.
It would sting a little bit if you didn't get there. It would sting a little bit. That is
now,
and that was kind of the whole point.
That's brilliant, because then what happens is people would be like, well, no, I'm just going to fill them out as I go along. So when you would run into a customer, you'd be like, okay, customer 701, dates, and then you fill out their information. Nope. However, that cost you because you were having low expectations. I didn't know that this was something that you came up with. Like, this is where you got this, but my student manager got this from you because he was like, still fill out 10. And my goal was always to have all those filled out so that when you get to a blank one, which is what you just said, get to a blank one, which means you would have 11.
That's a big win.
It's a huge win.
That's because like if you disappear into your day like you should, and you're not really paying attention to that. So like the ideal scenario is like you write up an order, you flip it over, and like you're in, like it'll happen when you're in somebody's house, like you just made your 10th sale of the day, and you flip it over and there's no ink, and you'd be like, oh,
this is 11, baby. Let's go.
And you get like another burst of energy, and you're like, yeah, I can go till 11. Let's rock, man.
Brilliant. That's huge. So I would only fill out like when I was in real flow state, and you got to be realistic to your goals too. So I would fill out 5. And whenever I got to like the blank one, I'm like, oh shit, I'm on 6. This is number 6.
This is a good day. I'm having a
jamming.
Good day.
Oh, I'm crushing.
And the best thing is if you can like flip that over and you're like, it's 3 p.m. I'm only halfway done with my day.
I'm cruising. Yes,
you cannot stop me. You can only hope to contain me.
Or you can also say everybody's getting them, and you are crushing, man.
Well, that's
huge.
That's when you're like that's actually a very good point. That's when your self-talk takes on a whole new level of helping you. Is when you're not actually speaking it into existence. You're just stating a fact. right? Like you flip over that, you flip over that blank order form, and you're like, damn, everybody really is getting them. That's not just some shit that I was saying 900 times a day. Like that's an actual fact. Everybody is getting them. I look like a crazy person. I just saw myself and my eyes bugging out. I'm like spitting. I'm all fired up right now. Sorry.
We're in the middle of no. This is great.
Those watching, sorry if I look like an insane psychotic killer right now.
Honestly, no, but that is such a huge lesson, like, dude. Like, I'm so happy that you mentioned this because I forgot about this. The cost of having low expectations is much higher than the cost of a fucking order pad. So raise the bar.
The thing is, there's very few things that do more to get good stuff into your subconscious brain. There's very few things that do that better than writing. And I mean,
yes,
with a pen on some paper. Like if I was to go back to the book field now, like I know that there's pads for your pre-approach and maps and all that stuff. Like I bet I would take advantage of a lot of that stuff, but I would probably do something. I would figure out some way to go super old school just for my brain's health in that regard.
That's brilliant, man. That's honestly, I forgot about that lesson that I had learned, and you are the first person in 109 episodes that's reminded me of that, of the power of holding yourself to a higher standard. Even because honestly, here's the thing: I would fill out 5, and I found myself ripping them, often. Right? You don't always hit 10. That's insane to hit 10. Maybe some people do, but I never did.
I did most days. I did most days.
Brilliant. You're brilliant, man. I didn't do that, but I remember when I rip them. You're right. There's like this pain. Like, oh, I didn't get those 4, or I didn't get those 5. But at the same time, I got.
But it would fire you up for it would fire you up for tomorrow, though.
Oh,
you'd be like, oh, we're gonna get them tomorrow.
Oh yeah. So I guess the key to this is if you're no longer in the book, you'll find a way to get yourself to that point where you're like, it hurts you to not get them, but it motivates you to write them, because there's such a crazy moment of like holding yourself to a higher expectation and then hitting that and then seeing yourself hit that I feel like that's how I think you just hit it in the head. That's thinking back on my time hitting those numbers. I'm like, man, that's exactly what happened. Is I would just focus on the positives. Okay, so I wrote up 5 and I got 4. Oops. But then all the other first years were getting 0 or 1. So I was above them, like I was crushing that. And
counting up wins,
I didn't do it. I didn't do that much. So counting up wins. What a brilliant reminder. Thank you for that. That is Roger. Gosh, you
stick with me,
stud. Kid. I will. I'm just gonna text you every day. So what do I do now? That's so good. That's so good. So brilliant. So, okay. So let me ask you this. So, I mean, there's 9 summers worth of stories, and we're obviously going to get to the ponytail stories here soon at some point, but there's still,
we've been at it for 2 hours.
Yeah. There's still, are we good on time? Are you okay on time?
I'm great. This is a little late for me, but this is extremely enjoyable. Are we doing good by you?
I'm good. I might need to take a potty break while you're talking. I'll still have you in my ears, but that's all good. Either way. Are you good? Are you good on the bathroom talk?
A little awkward, but I can hack it. Yeah, I'm good.
Hey man, this is the Ponytails. We're not known for being professional. We're known for drinking beer and having a good conversation about.
Listen, anybody who's still hanging with us 2 hours later, they're all in on this. They kind of want you to go pee, I think, Andres.
Yeah, honestly, maybe I just pee my pants. Do a good old Lee. No, we'll wait for that. I'm still good. I want to ask you this. So going through your career, because at some point we still got to talk about how you got into being this keynote speaker and what that experience was like. But what are some of the major, like maybe big highlights of your career as you're going through and thinking back on your 9 summers that you're like, man, that moment changed my life? Obviously, there's like ain't no stopping him, which I do want to have that story told. But like, from a moment of like career highlights that you think back and you're like, wow, I'm really proud of what happened there. What are some of those moments for you throughout your 9 summers?
One of them I already talked about was my day where I watched Don Meyer sell every freaking person that he talked to, and because that taught me about self-talk. That was huge. There was the other one that comes to mind right now was actually later in my career, where this is not a funny story, but it was where I finally kind of overcame my addiction to short-term recognition.
That sounds deep. Let's get
Yeah,
into it.
it wasn't my last. It was further along in my career, but like, yeah, I was seriously addicted to, hey, look at me. Like I was way too motivated by like being the last guy standing at the Sunday meeting, you know? And I had a week where it was like, you know, big, like whatever, you know, border battle, you know, a bunch of organizations were getting together, and there's going to be big recognition, and it was going to be, you know, it was a big to do. And I counted my sales in a way that wasn't technically wrong, but it was a little bit fudgy. Like it wasn't illegal. It was just like I wanted so bad to be the guy standing up at the end, that like we in our organization, we one of the rules that was like sort of self-imposed was that if you know, like people, I don't even know if people write checks on the book field anymore. But like we had a rule that if you took a check for the deposit and that check was post dated, like sometimes you had to work with people. They're like, hey, this check's not going to be good until I get paid. And if you took a check and you had to hold it for more than it was 2 weeks was the rule.
Yep.
You were not supposed to count that.
It was a weak customer versus
which counted for 0 units. And right. And so I had allowed myself during this particular week, because I wanted so bad to be the last person standing. Like I had some checks that I had to hold for like, you know, 16 or 17 days that I was like, they're good. Like they're good. Like, so I would count them. I was breaking the rules. I was cheating a little bit.
Mm.
And then I was the last guy standing that week. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, everybody's like, how'd you do it? How'd you know? Oh, wow. You know, 100 people like, wow, you beat everybody. And I just felt like a turd. I was like, oh, no, you know, nobody knew except I knew. And I was like, oh, okay. I gotta, you know, I didn't like confess in front of the group because that wouldn't have been helpful for anybody, but I was like, I got to get this off my chest. So I was like, one of the things that my sales manager told me was like, you know, if you're ever in a situation where you feel like you've just done something that you need to get off your chest, he's like, you got to tell, like, you got to confess, like, you got to tell somebody. And he's like, the person that you got to tell is the person that you would least want to know. And I was like, oh, I know who it is. I was like, it was Dan Moore.
Oh.
And I was like, but I was far enough along in my career that I was like, I was actually friends. Like I had gotten to know Dan, and I was like, I had the utmost respect for him. And I was like, shit, I have to call Dan Moore and tell him what I did. So I did. And I was like, Dan, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Dan. He's like, what? Who is this? I was like, it's Roger. He's like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I counted my units. I wasn't right. And so, you know, it was he was extremely gracious, and it was very loving, and it was an awesome conversation. And he's like, okay, you know what I was like, I know, I need to never do that again. So check this out. The next day, I'm like, okay, I can never act in that manner again, and I won't. The next day, my first sale, I stopped at some family's house, dumped the bag. It was the biggest possible sale that you could make at that time. It was 41 units, and it was a 41 unit sale. And I was like, right on, this is good. Like I'm back in good standing with the man upstairs and his universe. And then they wrote the check, and they're like, hey, can you hold it for a little while? I was like, yeah, I can hold it. And they wrote the check. I had to hold it for 2 weeks and 1 day.
15 days. Like, oh.
Literally, it was 15 days. And I was like, are you serious? Like, I have to count this as a zero. And in my head, I'm like, God, are you kidding me, God? Are you kidding me? Like, this is how you're going to. Andres, I am not joking. It was almost identical situations, literally all day, the entire day. I ran into every single situation that previously I would have said, sure, I'll put that on my weekly report. It was the single biggest day of selling that I had in my entire 9-year career on the book field. It was like 350 units and all of it delivered. All of it delivered. It all came through. It all came through, but for that day, I had to count it as a zero. I had to put down a 0 day on my weekly report.
350 unit day that never quit
I don't remember what it was. It was well over 300 units. Like I just sold everybody everybody was getting them, and it was just one after another. It was like, somebody gave me $100 bill on you also had to collect, right? Like you had to collect half the total. So like I had a bunch of people who were like, okay, the total was like $226, and they gave me $100 bill.
So it's just below half.
So it's just just below what I needed. And I was like, God, you son of golly, all day. And I had to put it down on my weekly report as a zero. And then at the end of the day, though, I was like, I feel really good. Okay, this is what it's actually all about. I just put a zero, and I'm going to sleep like a baby. All right, that was a big day for me. I don't think anybody but me and Dan know that story at all.
Thank you for sharing. It takes guts to share something like that, even years later.
That was a good day though. Yeah, that was a pretty pivotal moment. Wow. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones, but we're coming up on 3 hours into this.
Yeah.
Thing, so.
How do you think that day affects you now? Like when you think back on that day, do you think like it was like how do you reflect on it as 30 years later?
I actually almost every one of the coaching clients that I ever work with have a similar. It comes to a point where there's a similar thing. Sometimes it has to do with like integrity and ethics, like it did with me, but sometimes it is just that when you make a change, like when you seriously get committed and decide that you're going to change something about your life, I find that you almost always pretty soon after you make the decision, you're going to get tested. Like,
yeah,
listen, if you want to say that it's God doing the testing, or if you want to say that it's the universal energies doing the testing, whatever. But it's like you get tested. At about 10 o'clock after I had my third one of those on that day, I was like, I am being tested by God. I am being tested. like I'm going to get punched in the, I realized, I was like, I am going to get punched in the face all day on this issue because somebody needs to see if I'm serious. And so it's like, I don't know, like it's a nice place to, you asked how does this affect me? Like I still find that, sometimes when I decide I'm going to make changes, I get tested. And how you handle that really, it can become like a crossroads in your life. So it's helpful to be able to kind of go, hey, let me tell you this story about what happened to me. And the first time I can remember getting tested like you're getting tested, and people are like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna pass the test. So it's helpful.
Brilliant. Oh, that is really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. That means a lot.
You thought we were gonna fall off of our chairs laughing, but like we're getting into some real goodness here today.
No, we've laughed quite a bit. It's been pretty good.
I hope so.
Pretty good. Yeah, it's been good. All right, so maybe it's time to jump into our ponytails.
Oh boy.
And I'm excited about this because I know you have. I mean, of course, I need to hear the ponytails version of the "Ain't No Stopping Them." I know I've requested. That's my personal request. But then after that, we can talk about whatever you want. In your keynote, you described it as your funniest. But now, before we get into that, I'm going to share a little bit more about a couple of our partners, and then we can jump in, man. So real quick, I want to talk about a little bit about EnLight.Energy. So EnLight started to do with solar what Southwestern did with real estate. So if you have a passion for the planet, desire to earn some good money, maybe you want to work with someone like Nick. Nick Taverdi's crushing it right now in the industry. You can see how you can join him in Julio Hernandez, who was a DSM in the mid 2000s with EnLight's sale every other week with solar, which is kind of crazy. You can every other week, if you make a sale, you got a 6-figure income. And they have the ability to work with people in about pretty much every state in the US. Plus, you're not selling anything on top. It's just more like an exchange of a bill. So instead of paying the electric bill, they're paying the solar bill, helping people save some money. If you're looking for something to do, career change, reach out to us, and we can definitely get you hooked up with Julio. They'll get you a free an automatic interview if you sold books. So get to us on that. I also want to talk about VDisain. So our website's coming out. By the way, guys, if you're looking to get ponytails merch like this hat or some other cool get up, by the way, Roger,
I got to get me one of those hats.
Heck yeah, man. It's for you. So our website's
going to ask you about that.
Good. Our website's actually launching here pretty soon. But VDisain are the people who are the masterminds behind it. Oscar and Oliver, they're in Estonia. This is actually huge. If you own a business and you want to have a pretty solid presence online, we know now that in 2022 that if you don't have a website for your business, you're kind of lacking. The podcast it needed a website, and that's why we went with them. Most American website developers cost anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000 for like the project that we have built. For their website, where your merch, your episodes, all the different things, all these different integrations live in our website. Now you can do it pretty cheap for like $1,000 or something like that, but you're gonna get what you pay for. So our friends over at VDisain, they kind of brought their expertise in these integrations, and they really made it easy for us to work with them. We got a pretty good discount on them because we're paying Estonian prices. So it's important that you have a solid website that funnels all your traffic to the places that will help you improve your customer interactions. So get in touch with us. We'll get you in touch with Oliver. The reason that we did that is because there's a lot of people that we wanted to reach out, and we had no idea anything about coding, and they knew all of it. So make sure you reach out to us. We'll get you guys in touch with them. And then lastly, one more shout out to Cardinal. I know you mentioned Cardinal, Roger. You work with them, and of course, remember they're on growth mode. They're looking to double the production for a 4th year in a row. If you guys sold books and you're wanting to switch into a career that you can have a better work-life balance with, not worry about your availability of your clients, but just more worry about your schedule and make it so that you can impact your clients in a big and meaningful way, all at the same time earning 6 figures and above. Cardo could be the right fit. Roger, of course, you've worked with them, so you know all about that. Refer a friend.
Guys.
Yeah, refer a friend, refer yourself.
And women. I say guys.
Men and women. That's right.
I gotta work
make sure. Yeah, a $500 referral bonus going through May 1st. If somebody gets referred and then they get hired, if you refer somebody and then they get hired, you get $500. So make sure you reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with Quentin Roberts and in that team so that you guys can get your bonus for sure. So ponytails time. This is your mic right here. You can take it away from here. You could tell any story you want and have it go in any direction you want, my man, but the mic is yours. Roger Seip and your ponytails. All you.
Oh, wow. So this is just like say something funny time.
No, I mean, it could be funny. I mean, we've heard stories about someone who went to jail. Matt Atchison told us about like the biggest leadership lesson he ever learned. So it was more like meaningful. Yvette Keiser did the same thing. You remember Yvette? She was ledge, and she told us about like the biggest 3 lessons that she learned in her book field. Lee McCruskey told us his flagpole story of his poop story.
Oh my God, that's.
By the way, if you haven't heard that episode, you gotta go check it out. There's a link right here that you can.
So this is actually not a. This is not. It's not technical ponytail because it didn't happen on the book field, but I actually have a similar story from my current career that definitely relates to the book field because I definitely had a simple problem. I actually tell this story as the like I often tell this. One of the things that we do is we do speaker, like we train organizations and people on how to speak professionally or in public, like how to communicate with groups. And when we do that work, we call it speaker school. And when we do that, we generally start with just to kind of open the group up. Okay, tell the story of your most embarrassing moment as a communicator, like as a speaker. And mine is super clear. It was early in my career as a speaker, and I was going to do. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I was driving up to Appleton, Wisconsin, and I was speaking to a group of financial advisors, and I was on early, so I had to get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning because it's like a 2-hour drive to get where I was going, and I was literally on at like 7 a.m. And I was not feeling well. Like I had a case, like I had, I don't know if it was I had some version of the flu, and I just was not feeling good. But I was like, dude, show must go on. We got to go. Like I'm on. I got to go, and I'm just feeling horrible, and I'm wearing a dark gray suit. And I get there. And I get there on time, and I'm just like, I'm running a fever, and I'm sweating, and I'm standing in the back of the room. It wasn't like a huge group of people, but we're in Kimberly, Wisconsin, just a suburb of nowhere. And it's getting to be time where I'm on. I'm like, oh, my stomach's just rumbling, and I'm like, okay, I'm standing in the back of the room. And I'm like, I'm like, I got like 15. It's like 15 minutes before I'm scheduled to speak to this group. I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. And I'm like, oh, like I go to the back of the room, and I'm like, okay, I gotta relieve a little pressure here. So I'm like, like full on, just bleh. And I'm like, no one was looking at me.
Oh no!
I was like, all right, I'm like,
no.
oh, I'm gonna squeak one out, and I'm like, oh no! I'm like, I have a problem. I was like, uh-oh, I have a problem. I'm like, I'm on in 15 minutes, and I just shit my pants. Like nobody's ever shit their pants. I know that one of your rules is that your stories have to be true. This is a true story.
Oh God, no!
This is one of the days on how I started my speaking career.
Oh,
and I was like,
God.
all right, what am I gonna do? I'm like, all right, okay, bathroom, go. I fully flash back to like book field problem solving mode. Like when 5 of my rookies crashed their cars on the first days of delivery. I'm like, okay, solve the problem, Seip, solve the problem. So I was like, okay, what do I got? Okay, get someplace private. All right, clean yourself up. I'm like, what am I? I'm like, I can't. Like, well, we're going commando. Like, here we go. Like these are going away, and yeah, I went and
Oh my gosh.
Gave my talk. I solved the problem, man. Sometimes you just got to do what it takes, you know. And the good news is that this is I talk about it in almost all of my talks. I at least I was sick as a dog. I really was not feeling well. But I at least was like, oh, dude, this is gonna make a good story.
I mean, brilliant lesson. If you're about to speak, don't fart. You
Well,
might shit
listen,
yourself.
sometimes there's just nothing for it, you know. Lee McCroskey can attest. Lee McCroskey's that kind of story happened in Fremont, Wisconsin, which is a place where I go to fish all the time. Like I drive by the flagpole like a couple times a year. I'm like, oh, that's the flagpole. That's the flagpole where Lee McCroskey shat himself.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's
gosh.
good.
Nobody's heard this story before, or you've told the story before.
I've told not to a ponytails crowd. There's a small number of people that know that story. And
man.
Now the world knows too.
Yes, I'm happy about it. I'm happy about that story.
That's good. I got to tell you, I know you asked me about the Handsome and Bubba story. I know you asked me about the Ain't No Stopping Him, He's Just Too Damn Big story. I'm going to say, like, that's available on so many places that our listeners can find it. Like, it's a 10-minute story, and people should just listen to that speech. It's pretty easy for this group. It's pretty easy to find that story.
Yeah, listen to the original. You could probably find it somewhere. This is true. Yeah. We can have that be a story for another time.
That could be a story for another, if you don't mind. That could be.
I don't mind.
For another time.
Hey man, it's your podcast. I'm just here asking you questions. It's about you, man. It's all good.
That's good. I do want to tell one other story that relates to a story that I think a lot of people know. Is the one of the stories that I tell about attitude and about finding the humor in things is that's maybe it's a reasonably famous Bookfield story, is the story about Wade Bushman. We have a serious problem. Buck naked in the shower in the sales school.
Yes.
Like that's another one that you can listen to on the recording of the sales school speech. But I got to give props to Wade because I think I'm going to be seeing him in a couple of weeks. Actually, the part of that story, like that's a true story. Like Wade was he was wound way tight, super successful kid, wound tight, and just took everything way too seriously. And like literally in hour one of sales school, we get checked into the hotel. For anybody that doesn't know the story, I'll tell the short version. He gets in the shower, and like just in turning on the shower, he's so like wound up about like just taking a shower that he literally yanks the entire unit off the wall at the Red Lion Inn in Nashville, Tennessee. And like the whole shower just blows up on him. And I mean, he's just getting like fire hosed in the solar plexus. He's like, what the heck is going on? So me and all the other student managers go, oh, it was totally poor. I mean, he was so out of his element. I mean, he'd grown up on a farm in Greenwood, Wisconsin. And, he's like way out of his element. And he's just he's pinned up against the wall. And he like, as I'm watching, he like picks up the unit, he pushes, there's water spraying everywhere. He's like, you guys, we have a serious problem. And I'm like, dude, okay, Wade, just pause for a moment. We don't have anything. Like, there's no we here. You did this to yourself.
Oh,
that's number one. Number two, bro, have you seen yourself in the last 5 seconds? This is not serious. This is the most hilarious freaking thing I've ever had happen in my life. This is awesome. So that's a fairly great story because Wade then went on to be, like he's a pretty good book guy, and he's like a great dad and a amazing human being, and recruited a bunch of his brothers who then went on to be, great book guys in their own right. But the thing about that is the part of that story that I don't think anybody knows is that summer, that was our West Virginia summer. Like that was the same summer that Alicia Huck started and was on the team that was number 1 in the company to my team's number 2. That was another kind of like legendary summer. Like in my world, it was legendary. Delivery week. Like this was, again, back in the day before there was email or internet or smartphones or anything like that. Like our communication system was this voicemail box, right? Like the companies, like you had a number that you'd call it, and like you could leave a voicemail that, whoever you needed to pick up could pick it up later. So day 1 of deliveries, it's the end of deliveries, and I've had to spend the day delivering with one of my rookies who was just too young and too much of a doofus to get a car. So like I had to take a day out and like drive him around. So I get a call at the end of the day, and it's Wade. And the message is, I'm getting it like 2 hours later. So I can't actually do anything about it. But the message is, hey, Roger, it's Wade. You said that if I got a call, you said that if I had a really big problem, like at delivery school, if I had a really big problem, that I should call you on this number and leave you a message. Well, I drove my car into a ditch and totaled my car that I borrowed.
Oh shit!
I totaled my delivery car. I'm getting this message at like 9 p.m. The timestamp on it is like 6 p.m. and he's like, so I'm like, he's like, I'm kind of screwed here. I'm not sure what I should do. And then this is verbatim. He goes, what? Hold on a second. He's like, I'm like at a gas station, and maybe you could come pick me up and help me finish the. Oh wait. Hold on. There's a guy in a van. He looks like he has some tools. I gotta go. and he like the dude that couldn't handle taking a shower at sales school, like literally saw a dude at a gas station who looked like he had some tools, and he like approached the guy and was like, hey, here's my situation. And it turned out that the guy had some tools, and they fixed the car, and he finished his day of deliveries. And so there was like another voicemail in the voicemail box, timestamped like 3 hours later. Hey, I got it figured out. Finished my day of deliveries. I was like, wow. This is the same guy. This is the same guy that couldn't take a freaking shower.
In the shower.
This is the same guy that thought the shower was a serious problem. So I like the thing that I love about this. I'm feeling like we should probably wrap this up. This is we've gone. Sure. We've talked a long time.
Yeah.
It's just I got to tell you, Andres, like this is the thing that I love about what you're doing with the Ponytails podcast is like there's just so many stories where people either won big unexpectedly or just got their soul crushed and then came back from it, within like an hour, or so many. Like I just love that this Ponytails podcast exists, because there's just so many stories like Handsome and Bubba and Wade Bushman, and there's just so many of them. So I really appreciate you providing such a cool forum to share time and lessons and laughs and all that good stuff. So thanks, man.
Well, no, again, thanks to you, man. And this is a good bow to end this on. I got to shout out to our team: Nick Taverdi, Naomi Kaufman, Heather Dunn, Amy Lester. These are people who are all helping me with this. This is not my thing. This is our thing, and it's for the network. It's for the alumni. It's for everybody out there who did this thing for at least one summer and knows what it's like to cry in the corner, knows what it's like to think it's the shower is a big problem, and then realize that life is much harder than that. And so you got to just kind of figure it out. And I appreciate you
But I
saying
can.
that.
But I can.
Yes, sir.
I got to figure it out. And I can figure it out, so I will.
I'm honored. I'm honored that you were on this. I want to say thank you to you and for the impact and the legacy that you have left in this
My
company and in our show and every single alumni that's ever heard your keynote address and is following along. I want to say thank you and thank you for being here with me tonight. And guys, again, what a good way to end this one. You know, we're calling it Ponytails Podcast for a reason. It's about the ponies, right? And we are the actual ponies. You are a pony, I'm a pony. We bought into something blindly that ended up changing our lives for the good, mainly for the good. And it's been a pleasure. So thank you so much, guys. Make sure that you subscribe, follow us everywhere. We are going to be in Nashville next weekend at Lee McCroskey's house. If you want RSVP notes for that, let us know. BIZZLER is August 15th through the 19th. Deadline for that is May 1st. This has been Roger Seip, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you so much. If you want to get a hold of Roger, I was going to mention this, Roger at deliverfreedom.com. If people are interested in reaching out to you to learning and getting some coaching about speaking.
Yep. Or whatever. If you want to actually talk to me, send me an email. I mean, you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn and all those places, but give me a shout.
That's right. Well, guys, my name is Andres Gamboa. We have been on the Ponytails Podcast with Roger Seip. Thank you so much. Look out for Lester Crafton this month, and we have some bigger names coming up on the show. So make sure you sign up for that one, subscribe, and go check out all the other ones. Alicia Huck, Lee McCroskey, and a bunch of amazing. Even if you haven't heard of them, I guarantee you every episode has got some golden nuggets to listen to. So thank you so much. We'll call it a night. See you, everyone. Have a good evening.